We still can't hear you, Hank. I don't know what it is. Shalom, everybody. We are dealing with some technical difficulties because we can't hear Hank, unfortunately. But our guest star, Father Hugh Mackenzie, is here, and Sam made it too. I was just explaining that in June, at the beginning of June, we are having a Paul Vander Clay symposium that Sam is arranging. Oh, okay, Hank. That Sam is arranging, and
Hank too, I should say.
And-
Hank gets credit for arranging it too.
Unfortunately, Sam isn't actually going to be there, though. But I am driving out there. I am going to visit Pastor Tanner on the way. I am going through Indianapolis, Minneapolis. I'm going to visit Father Eric, Salt Lake City on the way back. So if anybody watching actually wants to meet up with me and you're anywhere on the way, please let me know.
But you're going up to North Dakota?
I am, yes.
On the way there or the way back?
On the way back. On the way back.
Has Father Eric then said he can't come?
No. I don't believe Father Eric can come, but I was gonna visit him anyway. I'm also gonna visit Sally. She's somewhere in the vicinity. I won't dox her. But we're here to meet Father Hugh Mackenzie. And I'm just gonna say what I always do, which is the Catholic Church has 1 billion members, and ordained Roman Catholic priests are representatives of a church of 1 billion people, which for me means that they should be afforded with a particular amount of respect that, unfortunately, due to our Protestantism, we don't necessarily do that in the United States. And that's why Father Eric has been a frequent. He's the only real repeat guest on my YouTube channel. And Father Hugh, when I saw that he was getting involved in our community, I wanted him to have a chance to introduce himself and for people to get to know him and to speak to him. And Joseph is here too. So Father Hugh, please introduce yourself. Tell us how you got here and what your interests are.
Great. Thank you very much for having me. And it's great to see our other guests as well. So we have Hank, Sam, and Joseph. Thank you all for coming. And I don't know if there's anyone listening online, but welcome to them as well. Yeah, I've been a priest, as Jacob kindly reminded everyone the other day, for many years. So,
that means we should respect you.
Yeah, well, perhaps we haven't done. Perhaps we've, made too many mistakes. But no, so I got interested in the bridges of meaning. Servo, is it called? I think it's called a servo, isn't it? It's through Paul Vander Clay. I got into Paul Vander Clay through actually looking for someone discussing Thomas Nagel's book, Cosmos and Mind and Cosmos, I think it is, which I was reading at the time. So, and then of course I saw that he had done something, I think, on that book and on C.S. Lewis that I have an interest with, and on Jordan Peterson, sort of reflecting upon all three. So that was having already had an interest in Jordan Peterson.
Well, so, you're working on a PhD, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So it's on Plato's Proof of the Soul, which is a theme, the reflecting on the human soul, that I've certainly been interested in for quite a long time. I've been aware, I suppose, that the traditional Catholic proofs of the soul are no longer popular, and no longer use the Catholic Church used to regard it as quite an important thing to show that we have something that's not physical, but that I think the older arguments don't quite work personally in the modern world, and I think that's one reason maybe that we don't use them, and one reason that they are that the soul perhaps is not believed in so much.
Before we get too philosophical, I just wanted to ask you maybe to speak about your calling and how you came into the priesthood and things like that. Just so people get to know who you are.
Yeah. So I went to university in Scotland, and I did computers there, and they had quite a good Catholic society. I think when I went to university, I was drifting away from my Catholic faith a little bit. Not totally, but they had a very good society there where they had some good speakers on the Catholic faith. And really through those talks, I suppose, initially a sort of intellectual journey, I was re-enchanted by the Catholic faith. And a number of the talks did refer to science, and I was studying maths, physics, and computers at that point. So that particularly interested me. And then as a result of that, I then became friends with someone, and we ended up in sort of a hall of residence, I think, together in Diggs, and he encouraged me to start praying as well. So I guess the sort of head and the heart were unified. And then I did a bit more study after university, and I worked in computers a little bit. And then another friend from university who was training to be a priest invited me into the seminary where they train people to be priests. And I had just broken up with a girlfriend at that point, so I think it was slightly on the rebound, actually, because I was quite traumatized by the breakup. And my friend at the seminary said, "Oh, I don't like this college at all. I'm not enjoying it." And I remember the contrast of just sitting there my first time in the college, just feeling at peace. And after that, I just prayed about this feeling of peace in the seminary, thinking, gosh, that was so strange somehow, in a place that my friend didn't like. And I felt an unusual sense of perhaps even excitement. And I found over the next 2 weeks, just silent meditation, that I had this great, so I was on the rebound a little bit, but it felt like even maybe a deeper way of loving, to become a priest, to have a bigger family in a sense than just my own family, to have a parish. And as a result of that, I just applied 2 weeks after that seminary visit. So I didn't have a massive up and down in discerning my vocation, which many people do. Is this the right thing? Is it not the right thing? And I haven't had too many doubts since then, actually. I've been quite lucky in that sense. If I do, I find this sort of silent meditation normally gives me peace again about this vocation. So I went off to train. I was lucky enough to have some of my training in Rome, which was quite an exciting place. And I studied, specialized in philosophy at that stage. And then I became a priest, went through various parishes, and was a sixth form chaplain at one point. Parish priest, a little bit of lecturing in the seminary as well. And now I'm at Westminster Cathedral trying to finish off this PhD. And also I'm a chaplain in a hospice, which is quite powerful, quite a lot of deathbed ministry there to a whole range of faiths as well, meeting ministers of other religions who are coming to the deathbeds of their parishioners or people in their communities. So it's quite a rich life at the moment, working here at the cathedral in a hospice, as well as doing some study.
I didn't invite Father Eric to join us because I thought he would be busy, but he actually commented, women who needs them. So,
all right. Yeah, well, there we are. He's got the message. Yeah.
So your parish is the Cathedral of Westminster, which is kind of the seat of Catholicism in the United Kingdom, correct?
Yeah, it would be the mother church for England and Wales. That's the way the Catholic Church is organized here. So it doesn't include Scotland or Northern Ireland. They have separate jurisdictions. But absolutely, yes. So we have Cardinal Nichols, who is in effect the head of the church in England and Wales, living in part of the building here. as well.
So he's actually your bishop.
Absolutely. Okay. He's my father in God, we say. It's my boss, one of the many bosses I have, actually. But
well, I mean, if you wouldn't mind just for a little bit explaining that relationship, because I think a lot of us, again, we're as Americans, we tend to be very Protestant, and I know that the bishop relationship. Hank, go ahead.
No, I was just testing. I finally got the mic to work.
Oh, great.
Sorry.
Well, Hank is also our resident Catholic today. So,
great. Great. That's good to, especially good to have.
But I think a lot of times, especially in the United States, we don't really understand the relationship between a bishop and his diocese and subsidiarity in the Catholic Church, how local actually the Catholic Church is. So if you wouldn't mind if you could explain that a little bit.
Okay. So really there is a hierarchy in the church with the Pope at the top, and then the bishops, and then the priests, who are either like myself, a secular priest, an assistant to a bishop, or they're in an order which lives by a particular charism or spirituality. So there's really, I suppose, those three levels. The bishop is the head of a local church. Priests are often the head of a parish, and there might be, say, in this diocese, 200 parishes within our local church, which is called a Diocese of Westminster.
Okay.
So our bishop happens to be a cardinal, which is really an honorary title. It means sort of advisor to the Pope. So really, in terms of the sort of formal authority, it's really Pope, bishop, priest.
What's the difference between an archdiocese and a diocese, or an archbishop and a bishop?
Yeah, so the dioceses across the world are organized together in sort of geographical groups. There might be, maybe 5 dioceses organized just for mutual support, really. And the head of that would be called an archbishop, but he wouldn't necessarily have much formal authority that I'm aware of over the other dioceses in that grouping.
And I noticed on your channel you mentioned I actually went and read some of their information, but there's a particular religious group that was founded by a woman and her son. Now I'm forgetting what it was, but that on your channel that you said you were very
yes. So as you said, we see the church as having sort of top down, but also bottom up. Or you mentioned the word I think you use subsidiarity and solidarity. Solidarity is well, let's just leave those terms for a moment. But in terms of top down and bottom up, there is, I've just mentioned the top down, but there is also the bottom up, the charismatic side. So there's a hierarchy on the charismatic side, and that is to say that there is encouraged at the level of parishioners for people to meet as groups and associations, perhaps with particular spiritualities, and some of the more formal ones, usually involving priests, I mentioned, were orders. And in recent times, there's been also things called movements, which are examples of these gatherings and of lay people and priests together, and maybe some bishops, who have a particular charism, perhaps, to serve the church, which they themselves have discerned, and that's normally encouraged. And as long as it believes the Catholic faith, then whatever its particular charism is encouraged. And I've been involved in one of those called the Faith Movement, which is one that did say in about the early 1970s that there was a time for now to update our catechesis, our way of explaining the faith, in the light of much of the modern knowledge that had emerged during the 20th century, and particularly since, for instance, the rise of modern science. There were new ways of understanding the physical world, for instance, in which we live. I suppose evolution would be one example. and there was a feeling that maybe the church hadn't listened to that development enough, that something going on obviously outside the church, particularly reflecting upon that. And so the faith movement was formed here in England, and I've been influenced by that from university. They were involved in the talks at St Andrews University where I was, that had an effect on me. So that's called a movement. There are quite a few different movements, particularly in Europe, with different spiritualities or charisms within the Catholic Church that are encouraging us to engage in different ways with the modern culture.
I just want to invite anybody who's watching, if they want to put any comments or questions into the chat, or any of the people who joined us, Hank, Sam, Joseph, if they want to ask Father Hugh any questions. One thing I did want to bring up was in their discussion, Hank, we've been talking a lot about Neoplatonism in this little corner of the internet, and Hank and Sam were talking about it. And Hank, I mean, maybe you could clarify yourself, but you kind of felt that there were aspects of Neoplatonism that were heretical to the church. And I thought Father Hugh might be the best person to actually explain that. So I don't know if Hank, you want to explain your views, or yeah.
Well, I think Father Hugh, just to broaden this out a little, Sam and I have been doing about a year on early church fathers, and specifically more on Trinitarian theology. Sam is a biblical Unitarian. I am a Orthodox Catholic Trinitarian. And we read the early
Remains
church.
to be seen. I was just saying that remains to be seen.
Well, Sam, you know what? If you reread John enough, you'll become a Trinitarian also. But what we notice a lot of times is that the early church fathers have a tendency to bring in their Platonism into the discussion of Christian thought and theology. As a matter of fact, they can't help but do it, because most of the early church fathers, if they were educated in Platonic thought and philosophy. And sometimes I find that some of the ways that it went can border on sort of heresy, or their thoughts are so. It could be that they're so different than our thoughts because of you're talking ancient thought as opposed to what we could say today is modern thought. So, and of course, things have changed with nominalism and Thomistic theology and philosophy. So there's times when Sam and I dig into a church father, we'll read it, and there's times where I'll say, yeah, this sort of looks borderline. You know, we did four long discussions of an hour and a half or more on just origin.
I think we hold the record for most YouTube content specifically about origin on the internet. So
yes. So if you ever want to know about origin, you can just go on our YouTube and
yeah, I
origin.
can see the name in origin there quite often on. Is it Sam? It's Sam, isn't it? Sam's interesting channel. Yeah. Mm.
So I think that, and I think within the Catholic Church, as I'm a new Catholic. I've only been a Catholic for a year.
Okay.
Yep.
We had to congratulate you on that.
Well, you know, Sam will also finally come to the light of the true Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. But what I sense, you know, as I'm digging more into theology and church history, is the tension between, especially the Catholic Church, the Thomists and the Platonists. And my daughter is definitely a Platonist. She just finished her dissertation on Edith Stein. on the hierarchy of values. She's a lot smarter than I am. She's very conversant in Latin, and is learning now learning ecclesiastical Latin, and looks like she'll become a Carmelite nun. So we sort of take this seriously, but I'm always looking to, even at my advanced age, Sam, I'm looking to be educated.
Oh, well, that's a nice lead in to. Yeah. So obviously, Plato, I suppose, has been very influential through Aristotle into Thomas Aquinas, and Edith Stein, of course, is into phenomenology, which is perhaps another influential thought today that perhaps has roots in some aspects of Thomas Aquinas. So there's quite a few different threads there today. I would say we are a revealed religion, so we believe in faith and reason. So again, we believe in the bottom up, which in the intellectual sphere, I suppose we call reason, sometimes maybe philosophy in a more academic way. And the top down, we believe is revelation through Jesus Christ, the Bible, the church. And we believe that there's only one God, so they should fit together. We believe God is infallible, so he tends to get it right. So if we can discern what he's revealing, then that would have priority. But we also believe that we can use our minds. We tend to say they're somewhat wounded by original sin, but they're still good. So we would expect all good philosophical thought, Plato, Aristotle, Thomas, phenomenology, other significant schools of thought maybe today, to have aspects of truth that we can learn from and synthesize and use. And obviously, I haven't mentioned Neoplatonism as well. So we would expect all of that, but at the same time, we wouldn't be scared of saying that there can be some aspects of some of these thoughts that are inconsistent with revelation. In terms of the Neoplatonism, perhaps the idea of the one in Neoplatonism, my understanding of that, it's difficult to make that cohere with the beginning of the creed that we say each Sunday, that we believe in God, the creator of heaven and earth. And in our tradition in the Catechism, that's normally been taken as one God who is completely transcendent of the creation. And whilst there is aspects, I think, of Neoplatonism that attempts to apply something similar, I think, to the one, at the same time, it's also seen as just the sort of highest part of a hierarchy, which, in the way it's often presented, at least, I think is hard to cohere with the Christian doctrine of a transcendent creator.
I don't want to dominate the conversation. Yosef, Sam, if you have any questions or comments, please.
Yeah, I think I have a specific question that should be pretty relevant. I think when one of the ideas that I attribute to Plato and Neoplatonism that had its influence on Christian theology is the view of the immortality of the soul. And that seems like a particular question that you're interested in. My church growing up, in addition to having many of its other theological uniquenesses, one of the doctrines that we taught was that the damned are destroyed, not eternal suffering in hell. So still better to, that only those that are saved from destruction to eternal life, as opposed from eternality in a bad place to eternality in a better place, or something like that. And then we also taught in the intervening period between your death and the resurrection that your soul is asleep. And that, it's not quite the same as non-existence, but it's pretty darn close. And that there's a very close tie between the soul and the body, such that the soul really it was almost a material version, a material view of the soul, that the soul is really just your body in self-conscious animation or something like that. And that we attributed beliefs in the eternality of the soul and corresponding things like eternal conscious torment and stuff like that to a Platonic influence on the view of the soul being essentially immortal. So that I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, because it seems like you've spent a lot of time thinking about what the soul is, its immortality, and those sorts of questions.
Yeah, good. A good question. Yeah. So my understanding of the Catholic position on this, which has involved one or two quite authoritative statements and has been quite strong in the tradition, is an overlap with the Platonic soul, that we are made of physical body and spiritual soul. Physical body exists particularly and measured within time and space, and the spiritual soul is more measured by knowing and willing. And that when the body breaks down, the soul continues to exist, even though our identity is body and soul. Perhaps the risen body of Christ is important in that intervening period that you spoke about before the resurrection of the body, given that we believe our bodies are rooted in the body of Jesus, which is the exemplar of our body. So after death, we believe that the soul still exists, and yes, the purpose of our lives is to say yes to God, and therefore, amazingly, we believe to share his life. There's a little note coming up here. It's an aberration which should be rectified at the resurrection, says Eric. Can you add where everybody can see that? Can they see that question?
Yes.
So it's an aberration resulting from sin, because we believe human death is a result of sin. Yet there's still that sort of philosophical question, given that we are only one person, we're not a soul with an added body. How does the soul exist? And there's various debates about that. I'm quite interested in the idea that the risen body of Jesus will be important for that. There's a possibility of, if God, we believe, does everything to get through, but he can't force us to say yes to him. That's the whole purpose of this life and of human freedom, and the fullness of love does involve free self-giving, agape. And so it's possible to say no to that, we believe, and therefore to choose a state of separation from God.
And I believe that's a major difference between Catholic theology and Reformed Calvinist theology, correct?
The choosing part?
Yeah, irresistible grace, I think they call it.
Yeah, I think that would be my understanding of a sort of traditional approach of Calvinism to predestination, but I wouldn't be able to authoritatively comment on that.
Before I forget to mention it, Father Hugh's channel, and unfortunately I don't have a link there yet, but I will put a link to it. Yesterday had an excellent discussion with Pastor Tanner, who is a Reformed Baptist pastor in Colorado, and very involved in this community. And that was a very interesting conversation. I'll find the link and put it there. But go ahead, Father.
Well, so any other questions, or I can talk on.
I might throw in one.
Yeah, please do. Joseph, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, Joseph. Yeah. So to my understanding, I'm not a Christian, but talking with people in this corner, so the Eastern Orthodox metaphysics is much more Neoplatonist. Whether it's like St. Maximus the Confessor and essence and energies, and it seems so they've seen. You said in some ways that you can't get Neoplatonism to kind of work with the beginning of the creed, and yet there's this whole massive branch of Christianity that seems to have come to some sort of space that works. And I'm kind of curious, like how do you view that type of metaphysics, like an Eastern Orthodox metaphysics, like as a Catholic?
Well, yeah. So as I say, yeah, absolutely. So if I understood you, there is a tradition, particularly in Eastern Orthodoxy, of the sort of Neoplatonism and maybe sometimes panentheism, and some Catholic theologians have looked at that somehow God is in some way maybe beyond the universe, and yet the universe is part of God. And there are some writings within the Catholic tradition that have echoes of that. There are even a few phrases of Thomas Aquinas that might suggest that. However, I think the stronger tradition within Catholicism, and the one that is authoritative, is that panentheism, and certainly pantheism, is not true. We're theists. There is an eternal one God who is completely self-sufficient without creation, but out of generosity has decided to create us. I do think we need to use reason as well, and the Church has done that, and Thomas Aquinas did do that to attempt to show that there is one all self-sufficient, distinct, transcendent God. Personally, I think his arguments need to be updated in the modern world. I think our understanding of science is no longer Aristotelian science, and metaphysics comes after physics. Philosophy is based upon observation of the natural world, and if our observation of the natural world develops, so should our metaphysics, and I don't think we've perhaps done that enough. But so you asked how I would view those traditions. I think we can learn from them. I do think Neoplatonism has some interesting insights we need to learn from, but and have done, of course, down the centuries. But I think the panentheist position is wrong rationally and from revelation as well.
I obviously want to have lots more discussions with you, and hopefully in the future with Father Eric, especially we discuss the Trinity a lot in this corner of the internet, particularly the Egalitarian Trinity versus the Monarchical Trinity. I don't know if you feel comfortable talking about that. Father Eric has indicated he thinks that it's possible that the Monarchical Trinity is within Catholic orthodoxy. I know Sam had Dr. Joshua. I'm not even going to try to say his last name. There you go. Who is a professor of theology and I believe still Roman Catholic, although that's kind of up in the air, who defends the Monarchical Trinity from a Catholic point of view. And you did mention that you actually think the Egalitarian Trinity is better explains Catholic orthodoxy. So if you have any comments, I don't want to put you on the spot.
That's okay. No, I'm not an expert in any of these things, and not a theologian, but the God we believe is revealed, is the God whose name is with respect to the Jewish tradition, who don't use the name, but I think hopefully it's not disrespectful to say it in English. I am who am. He's revealed as one, simple, eternal, absolute, and he has at the same time revealed himself and the fullness of his name as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And the Bible, and particularly the tradition reflecting on the Bible, the authoritative Catholic tradition, has said God is three persons as well, one nature. And the three persons are Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And as Cardinal Newman, St. John Henry Newman, put it, what I understand to be the Orthodox doctrine of the Church to be that the Father is not the Son is not the Spirit is not the Father, but the Father is God, the Son is God, and the Holy Spirit is God. This is our revelation about the one being of the absolute simple God. So within that, we do have within our creeds that the Son and the Spirit proceed, we're told, from the Father, and the Son is the only begotten of the Father. We are allowed to speculate about what that means. We're not, we're asked to be careful about it because it's revelation, not something we could have known by reason. But to suggest that the Father would be, in any sense, more original, let alone more divine, would not be within the Orthodox Catholic teaching, is my understanding. So it's a foundational doctrine, and I suppose it involves revealing that our destiny is to be children of God, which is obviously a central doctrine for us, as it were, to be brothers and sisters of our Lord Jesus, and by the Holy Spirit to be adopted children of God.
I know we originally only scheduled this for 40 minutes, and if you need to excuse yourself at any time, please go ahead. But
yeah. Thanks for that. I think I didn't realize it would be late in the day for me, which is great, but fine, because I'm not going to do any more work after this. So that gives me a little bit late, I think. But, yeah.
Honestly, this is your show as much as it is mine. And if people have questions, please feel free to and Father Hugh, whenever he feels he has to go. I understand you have to do your evening offices, and tomorrow morning I'm sure you have mass early in the morning. So
and the same for all of you as well. No offense taken at all if you have to move on. I think quite a few of you are in the middle of your day, so understandable. So yeah, that's kind of you to say it's my show and I can talk, but even better if there are any questions anyone wants to ask, then feel free to go ahead. Otherwise, I could either talk about, I suppose, Jordan Peterson is probably the common theme here, isn't it? And obviously Jonathan Paget and obviously Paul van der Clay, particularly on the Bridges of Meaning server. Maybe I could say a little bit about my interest in Jordan Peterson if there's no other questions, perhaps, and see if that.
Please.
Yeah. So, it's interesting that Hank's daughter, I think, has been studying Edith Stein, but I would say that she would have been interested in Jordan Peterson because the thing that first struck me about Jordan Peterson was his approach to human experience, and the fact that he's just starting with something very basic, I think, about human experience, I think is one of the reasons that he's so popular, because I think that somehow human thought, particularly, say, since that big thinker Immanuel Kant, who sort of got people thinking more about the human mind, and sometimes he's talked about as inaugurating the turn to the subject, the human subject, in the 18th century. Since then, perhaps the Greek idea, that was not necessarily wrong, but had a massive emphasis, I think, on truth being something out there, and we grasp truth by simply getting something in the mind, like the form of something which matches what's out there, was moved away from into a way of thinking that I think is more phenomenological. That is to say, that it's recognizing that knowledge is not just a sort of mapping of something between what's in our mind and what's out there, but a real and a fundamental relationship with the world in which we live in, and that therefore we should begin to understand our world, and indeed science, through that relationship. And I think that is a Neoplatonic insight as well. So it's encouraged a movement back to Neoplatonism. Jordan Peterson articulated that, I think, very well, and touched something by using it to move us back towards a sense of objective goodness, for instance, because he said, you wake up in the morning and you find that you're in an environment, in a world that asks you to make decisions and make choices. And Jordan Peterson is sometimes quite pessimistic about this world. It says it certainly can be an awful place, and chaotic and disordered. But you wake up in this hell, and you should try and make it better, and start by making up your bed in the morning. At least, even if you have an awful day, you've got a made up bed to go back to. But also try and say, I'm going to make this hell a little bit better. And within that, he's linked in a sort of articulation that there is a goodness, there is a system of values out there which are real, and that the only way to stay sane in this hell is to believe there is goodness, and I can make this world a better place. And I think that struck a chord. I would call it a sort of phenomenology. Edith Stein, of course, was very close to the founder of the modern school of phenomenology, Edmund Husserl. And so that's the sort of angle I'm coming from. And I feel that this analysis of the human person, as what I understand, I suppose, as, and to a degree, the school of thought I'm in as well, in the faith movement, for instance, as a world in which I exist as an actor who can make decisions for the good or for the bad, in a world which is distinct from me and yet complementary to me. And this distinction is a sort of multiplicity. There is the world in which I exist, and there is me, and we are distinct. That's two realms, if you like, and yet also complementary. So there's a unity there. And of course, the Greeks, rightly, were very interested in the many and the one, the distinction and unity. I think this phenomenology suggests that the heart of unity is distinction, relationship. And I think Jordan Peterson's quite strong on this. That really it's very, my understanding of him is it's very difficult to talk about anything, and indeed anything even in science, without it being rooted in this experience of being an actor in a bigger world. And I think as modern science has explored that world, it's actually come up with this better, newer way of understanding the one and the many, or what the Greeks called it, or what the second millennium called it, the universal and the particular. The universal term is something which captures a number of individuals or particulars in one group, like a species name, for instance. And science has sort of confirmed this by showing that physics flows into chemistry. Hydrogen and oxygen molecules make up a molecule of water, and the water can be swept up into a higher identity in the arm of a human person or an animal, and there are these sort of hierarchies which science has discovered. So there's just a little bit of my interest in Jordan Peterson and a way of maybe linking with science, answering some of these perennial philosophical questions. Obviously, I suppose in the Catholic tradition, we're interested in taking good philosophy towards proving the soul and proving the transcendent God.
When Peterson had two Catholic theologians, I believe they are, from Word on Fire on his show, we actually did a little commentary with Pastor Tanner. Sam joined for a little bit, and then Father Eric came on and had some words to share. And did you have any comments or regarding that particular exchange?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yes, and I did see that. That was that. I both saw the original discussion between Jordan Peterson and a Dr. Petrucek, I think it was, and another Catholic doctor, who are both in the Word on Fire Institute, academics there with Bishop Barron. And there was this, as I think you pointed out, Jacob, as well, there just seemed to be a degree of disconnect at certain points. And I've noticed that to a lesser degree, I think, in discussions between Jordan Peterson and Bishop Barron himself, in that Jordan Peterson, to me, is always talking from this phenomenological point of view, but some of those Catholic interlocutors do find that very difficult to get their head around. It is a new way of thinking to try and place the human experience of being a potential actor in an environment at the heart of meaning, and that's not the Greek pattern, I would say. And the particular disconnect that you and with Father Eric particularly focused on, what was the one that I'd noticed as well when I first saw it, was when they just seemed to be sort of on different planets, really. When Jordan Peterson was talking, I think they were talking about the dinosaurs at one point and things in the past, and Jordan Peterson was saying, well, if there wasn't a human observer ever, then would they really be dinosaurs? It's a sort of, there's a philosopher called Berkeley who said something a bit stronger than that, but along those lines, it's almost, if there's not a human observer, is there anything else? But he wasn't going quite that far, but he was trying to say, I think at least that, what humans understand about the world is understood from our perspective. And whilst I would say, I'm not sure Jordan Peterson maybe articulated this enough, that there is still real stuff out there, but still it's understood initially as my environment, the place in which I wake up in the morning and in which I must act. And he was really pushing that very strongly. And the two Catholic professors were just sort of saying, what are you saying? Are you saying that the dinosaurs would not have existed if there'd never been a human being? And are you saying that if tomorrow there was a nuclear bomb dropped on us and all humans died, nothing would exist? And Peterson sort of came back, and then he did, as you pointed out, he sort of mentioned quantum mechanics, and he sort of, there's this quantum entanglement thing that sort of says that it possibly links up with this phenomenology, possibly. And I don't think he was maybe quite as strong as you were saying in using that, but he was sort of saying there might be something in quantum mechanics that says that maybe nothing exists if humans there. But he didn't go that far. I think he did sort of come back and say, well, if there's no human being to categorize things and to make distinctions, which is at the heart of our knowledge, then what distinction is there? And Peterson was sort of saying, I don't know how to describe it. He didn't deny that there would be stuff out there, but he was saying, is it just matter energy without any distinction or something like that? And, I'm sympathetic to that. I think I'd go a little bit further. I think there are things maybe that we can say about what's out there without the human person, but the reality is that we don't understand it that way. We understand it as the place in which I act, the place which enables me to act, the place which has moral values within it, according to Peterson.
I don't want to go too far off in a Jewish tangent, but I doubt very much you've heard of Omphalos, which is how most Orthodox, specifically what's called ultra-Orthodox Judaism, based on some teachings of the Talmud, really brings together the 5,782-year-old universe with science, which is this idea that while God obviously created the world and we are able to see things, that creation, as the Talmud puts it, as the Talmud says, that God created the trees in their fullness, betzivionam, that they were trees bearing fruit, and so the Orthodox, certainly the ultra-Orthodox Jewish belief, is that at the moment of creation, creation was fully formed, and so for me, it just meshes perfectly with that. Also, I wanted to mention that Sam and Ginger Bill, who is also British, actually, did a commentary video which was very high level and honestly beyond my understanding. A commentary on a discussion that Sir Roger Penrose had with William Lane Craig on Unbelievable, and which is another British show.
Premier Radio,
yeah, and I have very much been telling people that they need to listen to that discussion between Sir Roger, who is probably, I would say, the foremost physicist. I mean, he just won the Nobel Prize in Physics last year, I think it was, and William Lane Craig, because I think a lot of the atheists would, their jaw would drop to hear what what Sir Roger had to say. But yeah, I don't know if you had any comment on all of that, or if Sam has anything he wants to say regarding that whole Sir Roger thing. I know that Sam is an old Earth creationist.
Depends what you mean by creationist, but I should get going in probably a few minutes. But you know, whether or not anything would exist if humans weren't looking at it, it's sort of a weird question. You know, it kind of, my gut answer is, well, God's looking at it, so it could keep existing, which is something similar to what Berkeley himself, I think, believed too. But you know, this weird interaction that human minds have between what exists and what's intelligible and what's eternal is kind of hard to understand and hard to put your finger on. And that is what Sir Roger Penrose was also trying to get at when he was talking with not Jordan Peterson, William Lane Craig. Although Sir Roger did talk with Jordan Peterson, but Jordan Peterson didn't do as good of a job talking with him as other people have. But Sir Roger Penrose described this in a way that any Platonist would recognize, although I wondered how much or how little exposure to Platonism Sir Roger actually had. But he said that there was basically three realms. There was the realm of eternal truth, which is basically like mathematics and maybe things like forms or categories and stuff like that, stuff that's always true, and sort of basically the realm of logic as its form of interrogation and structure. There was the realm of consciousness, which is our minds, basically, you know, self-conscious awareness. And then there was the physical world. And then there was some connection between these three things. You know, the physical world seems to be governed by laws that are mathematical. our minds seem to be in this world, but also able to contemplate the eternal world. And so what is the connection between these three things? And any Neoplatonist would know how to answer that question. But it was interesting that, one of the premier leading physicists was wrestling with the same things and not just willing to have some trite atheist answer either.
Interesting. Thank you for that. Obviously, studying Plato, for instance, there is that three world thing, and it's stuck around in much Catholic thought as well. I think that there is the sort of spiritual or linked somehow with mind, and there is, as you say, the matter, the concrete level, which somehow concretizes, or for Aristotle and Thomas, individuates the form, and the form is maybe the third world, and I think it's similar to the way you're describing it. The only thing is that form matter distinction for Aristotle and it is slightly different, I think, I suppose, for Plato and Plato. But there is I think a truth as well that in Plato it sort of came from a focus upon organisms, living things, certainly for Aristotle, which are individual and yet have this universal character. They share significant characteristics with other universals, and they went for this third world, the form thing between the mind that we clearly have as a free creators, and the physical world out there that we manipulate and live in. But modern science has shown, in my opinion, and others, of course, you don't really need that third world, because it's shown that the sharing of characteristics, particularly in the light of phenomenology as well, is something that is intrinsic to the way matter exists, that all individual things exist through relationships with their environment that connect them with other things. And we know nothing about anything to do with matter energy that is not through its environmental relationships. And that is a formal thing. So that the world, that second world, the world of forms in the modern scientific mind is now the realm of the concrete.
Right. Like for a Platonist, they would have imagined, the perfect chair or something like that, right? That's always a classic example. There's the form of a chair, and then there's chairs that participate in chairness to greater or lesser degrees, which is why we can call them chairs. But a chair could catch on fire and burn into ashes, and then it's not a chair anymore, even though the material is still turned into soot. But for Roger Penrose, when he's thinking about the eternal realm, he's not thinking about the form of a chair. He's thinking about E equals mc squared and Newton's laws, perhaps, and quantum mechanics and mathematical formulas, and how the very atomic and subatomic governance of the material world seems to follow mathematical ideas. And the ancient Platonists, they loved math and geometry as much as the next person. And they kind of knew that there were certain mathematical patterns that would show up in materiality, especially if you were designing a good building, right? You wanted to have good mathematical form to the building. But they didn't imagine sort of every single interaction at some microscopic level being governed by mathematical formulas and relations, right? That really wasn't in their heads in the way that it is inescapably in the heads of anyone after the scientific revolution.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say that the perfect chair is a taking of chairness as we see them in actual existence to a sort of limit, and human minds are able to go beyond the limits of the environment and the limits of niches and the limits of the way things actually exist to an ultimate. So we can, in our use of language, which is the way in which we connect with others phenomenologically and practically, we can articulate the idea of a perfect chair or a perfect triangle. It doesn't mean the perfect triangle, exists outside of our creation of it. And I think there is an analogical sense in which, when, as Jordan Peterson points out, actually, when I make a tree stump into a chair, I haven't done anything to the tree stump, and yet for the human community that makes it an important chair, we do talk about it existing, and there does seem to be an analogical relationship of human artifacts. I know Father Eric's putting something up about human artifacts, but there is a relationship. We do significant, Boeing 747 does exist, and that's because the human community has decided it wants to use it. So similarly, the tree stump is a chair, a perfect chair, or the concept of infinity, or whatever are aspects of the spiritual human mind being able to go to the ultimate. It doesn't mean that there has to be an existential object for outside of the human community in the ultimate metaphysical realm for every thing that human beings posit. I don't think, and similarly with mathematics is part of the language which enables us to work together in connecting with the objective matter energy, which is patterned. It is objectively, truly interrelational through a hierarchy across physics, biology, and physics. And it works incredibly well and predictably, unlike humans who are free. But it does work mathematically, and that's what enables us to produce mobile phones. And so I don't think those traditional, which are absolutely the good traditional examples for defending this third metaphysical world within the Greek and scholastic tradition, actually stand up in the world of modern science.
Well, we lost most of our interlocutors. I do invite anybody who's watching who actually would like to come on, who knows me. You can direct message me, and this platform is very convenient. But Michael Sartori, who is a friend of the show, has a question. I'm on a 45-minute delay. I guess this is a chat about a lot of man-made tradition. So Michael is Protestant. And I understand his little dig there as a Protestant. But I have to.
As a Catholic, I will remind Michael that his Trinity and most of his theology came from us, but that's okay.
Well, I agree with you. The Trinity came from you guys. I'll give you that much. But I'll have to retort back before I let Father Hugh. Sola Scriptura is a self-refuting idea. Before you can say, I believe in the scripture, first you have to define what the scripture is. And while I am perfectly happy that the Protestants decided to go with the rabbis, because I agree, I have to say, if you are going to be a Christian and you define your scripture as the canon that the rabbis chose after Jesus, I think you have a particular self-refuting part there. So,
by the way, Jacob, you're one of my favorite theologians because you gave me the greatest gift ever to all my Calvinist friends, saying you thought that Calvinism was basically theological nihilism. And I use that all the time. And of course, that just triggers all the Calvinists. But, just to get back to things, because even when I was in evangelical, I understood that history didn't start when I was born. And, my father had a history, his father had a history, all that's brought down to us, okay? In America, we're a mishmash of histories. My grandfather came from Germany. My grandmother came from Italy. My other grandfather came from Ireland. And you have a lot of different ideas sort of coalescing together. So one of the things that I found interesting in our conversation is what we see out of Jordan Peterson and the Catholic theologians. The Catholic theologians are approaching things from sort of a top-down, revelation down. Jordan Peterson is coming up from a bottom-up. Biology, psychology, culture, all that interacting together. And I would say that Jesus himself worked within culture. He was in a unique culture, and he understood that culture as he was also bounded. He was a carpenter. He sweat. He drank. He ate. And sometimes what we do is, because we're coming from a top down, we don't understand the people coming bottom up. And at the other times, the bottom up guys don't understand some things either, because when I listen to Peterson, I hear Calvinism. When he was having discussions with Bishop Barron, he was talking about complete depravity. And Bishop Barron wasn't having any of that. And they were getting stuck in sort of a loop about depravity and good and evil and choice. Because Peterson, of course, does therapy. So he gets to see some of the worst things. He gets to hear some pretty gruesome stories. And so I could understand why he sort of has this kind of depraved, people are, basically we live in a bad world. Because if you're seeing people who are hurting, who've been maybe sexually abused, who have been physically abused, that would give you sort of a different insight than, say, somebody who's sort of flying at 30,000 feet most of their life. And the question I always have is, how do we converse together so that we can try to understand each other? And what's interesting is watching Jordan Peterson's own family. His daughter's become an Orthodox Christian. His wife has become a Catholic Christian. And Jordan Peterson is a man with 2 feet and 1 foot in each canoe. You could see that sort of.
Has she become a Catholic? I know she prays the Rosary. I
Yes.
wonder where she become a Catholic.
Yeah, she does pray the Rosary, and she goes to church, and she's getting. So yes, and she had a very good conversation with Jonathan Pajot about her faith.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've highlighted maybe one or two issues that, perhaps that depravity thing. That's a good point. I hadn't really noticed that, but now you mention it, I can see an element of that perhaps. And Jonathan Pajot is using this Neoplatonism, and I mean, could ask Jacob, but I don't understand how Neoplatonism can prove a transcendent God. I know Jacob and Jonathan Pajot talk about the totally ineffable God, but it seems to me there's a bit of the sola scriptura circular argument there, because if it's totally ineffable, how do you know it exists? If you can't speak about it, how can you speak about it? And let alone, how can you actually show it exists? But apart from maybe revelation, but and
precisely, yeah.
Okay, so it's just by revelation. But I mean, the Catholic insight is that in terms of the existence of God, if you're not prepared to engage on the level of reason to say that, and I think it's particularly true today, that reason shows that this God actually exists. Well, it's such a fundamental doctrine in religion that you could easily end up on the Lutheran or the extreme Lutheran side of being a sort of fideist and saying, well, ultimately reason doesn't really show us anything about God, and in which case that's why Peterson doesn't get there. That's why Vervaeke doesn't get there. That's why David Chalmers, who's very sympathetic to a lot of this thought, doesn't get there. It's why numerous others in this corner of the internet don't get there either, because you can't get there on Neoplatonism. I don't see how you can. So they are the rational ones within the Neoplatonist thing. I mean, I suppose you could say, well, I don't know, what is this? I don't quite understand what revelation is in a worldview where you can't show that there's a transcendent mind rationally. Then, how do you know it's revelation? I suppose maybe, I haven't really thought that one through, I suppose, but I think you're on a losing wicket, and I think that's personally one of the reasons why Jordan Peterson can't quite get there, really.
Well, I mean, I could go off on my thing, but everybody's heard way too much of me talking. But I think part of the problem here is that we define faith the way that the Protestants have, and one of my favorite sayings is John Calvin is a murderer, and I do believe he is a murderer. But and the so the definition of faith I use, which I believe is the biblical definition of the word emunah, is it is the extension of our reason beyond our reason, right? So there is no scientific way for me to prove that the sun did not explode 6 minutes ago, because the sun is 8 light minutes away from us, right? And it's not within my event horizon. So it's possible something happened to the sun 6 minutes ago and we just don't know about it. But it is reasonable for us to have faith that, in fact, the sun is there and will be there in 8 minutes and will be there in 80 minutes and 8 days, and won't go too far beyond that. But so my definition of faith, and this is one of the reasons that this channel so much focuses on teaching Hebrew language, because I believe going back to the Bible's original language would help us speak with each other more clearly. That this word emunah, right? When we say amen, right? What we are saying is that we are taking from our reason and, in fact, extending it beyond. And that may not be how the word faith or fide or but emunah, that word, I can cite chapter and verse how in the Bible it is used that way. Lahagid baboker chastecha ve'emunatcha ba'leilot. In the Psalms, it says to proclaim your loving kindness in the day and your faith, emunatcha ba'leilot, in the nights, right? And that is what emunah is, to know that the sun is there even during the night. Whereas during the day, that's the clear seeing of God's, that's the revelation of God's loving kindness, right? So that's my lower.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, there's a lot of, I think, I'm sure there's it sounds like there's a lot of wisdom there. And clearly we can't know everything about God, and God is beyond the horizon in certain ways. So but we can still talk about him, rather like you have just spoken about him. So his existence and some of his properties, and as Thomas Aquinas would say, are articulable, not ineffable. And that includes the property of being transcendent as well in our tradition, obviously. And but within that, absolutely, there's a mystery in the sense of being beyond what we can say as well.
And I think Zoe, we lost Hank, and obviously when you have to go, please feel free to excuse yourself.
Yeah. Do we have people tuning in online as well?
So according to this, there are 5 people watching.
Right.
So what I would say is it's important that, so for example, I know the Eastern Orthodox usually start their theology with prayer, and I think that I believe in Catholic theology. It's you discussed the dual magisteria, right? I think we have to have an epistemology that is based on revelation, which is top down, and one that is based on reason, which is more bottom up, and try to integrate these things while not allowing them to corrupt each other. So for me, I think, when we pray, when we study the Bible, when we ask God for that revelation, which is from the ineffable and what is beyond us, into and we integrate that as well as we can with what we as human beings can understand. Again, for me, that is what I would call Neoplatonism, and I don't know if I'm correct about that, but that integration of these two dual magisteria, if I'm using those terms correctly.
Yeah. I think the sort of top down, bottom up, I think is a big thing in Neoplatonism. There's the idea of sort of, from the one, the emanation is top down, and there's also an emergence bottom up, and there's quite a lot that is done with that. And there's a sort of idea that there's, and I think Pacho has it and others, that within the whole of being, I think there is this sort of similar pattern going on throughout the creation, really. I've heard Vervaeke and actually Sam, I think, talking about, particularly Vervaeke anyway, talking about how the very idea of human action and decision making is very similar to the process of variation and selection within physical evolution. So yeah, that's very much the idea of Neoplatonism. I suppose what I think does need to be added in is the distinction between matter and mind, including in human beings, which will rejig this pattern in a certain way. But it does mean, I would say, that in the physical world is not free, and therefore there is no sign of creative mind within the objects of science, the objects of our senses. And in that sense, whilst there are very significant and important similarities of patterns in human community, as there is in the chemistry periodic table, if you like, fundamentally there's something different there, because there is mind in the human community and there is not in the periodic table. And yet that one, it's going to rejig the way in which we understand the pattern, and it's going to root it in mind, which I think is a sort of phenomenological insight anyway. And it's therefore, it does involve in the human person making the distinction between soul and body, which is where we began, of course. So, yeah, so maybe, thank you very much for, doing this and introducing me to this amazing community, which is great to.
My pleasure, as I tell Father Eric, because you are a Catholic priest, and because the Catholic Church deserves always to have a seat at the table as representing a billion souls. I have made it my policy that any Catholic priest is in good standing, obviously, is always welcome on my channel. And anytime, if you have anything you would like to say, you are my channel is your channel within limits.
Yeah. I'm not yet at the top level, am I, within the hierarchy of it? But
well, so, okay, I'll actually go there. I have to say, I'll have to say that the Trinity is for me. I believe it is a betrayal of the teachings of Jesus. I'll put it that way.
Right. Well, that's another discussion, isn't it? That's a big one. Yeah, an important one as well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Keep up your excellent work on this I always get the terms mixed up, but it's the bridges of meaning server, isn't it? Is what we call it.
So on Discord, there are different servers. Obviously, I invited you to my server, and again, assigned you a rather high level on that. There are servers on Discord are kind of like rooms, they're breakout groups. Within servers, there tend to be channels where people discuss different things. So on Bridges of Meaning, there is the Catholicism channel, which is devoted to Catholicism and things like that.
What is Bridges of Meaning then? Obviously, Discord is a platform. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
And Bridges of Meaning is what?
So group? Bridges of Meaning is actually Joey Antonassi.
But what is it called? What's the one-word term for what it is within Discord?
It's called a server. So
it is called. So right, got it. And Jacob's Ladder is another server.
Correct.
Got it.
So
cool.
I created my server, Jacob's Ladder. Right. Bridges of Meaning is a server on which Joey Antonassi created for Paul Vanderklay. But Joey is the person who runs it. It's funny. So Joey's an atheist, and people keep on calling it a Christian server. And it's like, well, if it was a Christian server, then Joey, who owns it and administers it and decides who gets to be on it or not.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's the great work of Paul Vanderklay, isn't it? Because I think Joey's in one of his estuary groups or something.
So Joey actually, yes. So Joey goes to the meetup group. So there was a Jordan Peterson meetup group in Sacramento. There still is, which Paul Vanderklay got involved with. Now, I also I found about Paul Vanderklay through a Jordan Peterson meetup group here in Los Angeles, which no longer meets because of COVID. And one of the things that Paul is doing is he's setting up what he calls estuary groups, which basically have kind of taken over. I don't really see Jordan Peterson meetups very, very much. But so I think a lot of us are working together to try to bring all of this together. Estuary groups are physical meetings, and one of the most active ones is actually in Germany, and it's not affiliated with a church at all. And so so estuary groups, that's part of what Paul's trying to do, and I'm trying to be very supportive of.
It's a great movement.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Have a good trip to Chicago when you go.
Thank you. It's going to be in June, and I'm sure I'll have you back on again. Thank you very much, Father.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night. Bye-bye. Okay, I am going to stick around for a little while. If anybody wants to come on and discuss anything, you may. Otherwise, I'm going to sit here doing work. If anybody has questions or comments, please feel free to share them. So the troll postmodernist performance artist who is known as Claire Kaw showed up, and she's actually also been DMing me. Well, whatever organization she represents, and she says, what is a Jew hosting an idolater and blasphemer on his channel? And obviously the reason why I am hosting host Father Eric and Father Hugh and Catholics in general is, first of all, I don't think that they are idolaters. certainly there are problems there. Like I said, I certainly have my problems with the Trinity, but yeah, that seems to be the type of thing that unfortunately our society has gotten very into, which is being condemnatory and deplatforming. And the idea that you would deplatform the Roman Catholic Church is obviously self-evidently idiotic. It is a church of 1 billion souls. It is the largest human organization and most successful human organization in human history. So yeah, that's my answer to that. Okay. If nobody has anything else to say, sorry, I muted myself before I meant to. If nobody else has anything to say, I actually have work to do, which I'm going to try to do. But if people have questions and stuff, or would like to come on, please feel free. I always stick around on the live streams for a bit, just in case anybody is interested. Yeah. Claire is actually
Hello.
joining us. Give me 1 second. I am finishing up my something, and I will be with you in a second. I do actually have to work, believe it or not.
I'm afraid it is a bit of a mess. I did warn you.
Um,
I'll clear a few
nobody minds, but I think that having an actual person you're talking to helps better communicate and works as a good way of verifying that you're actually talking to a human being, which is incredibly important and something Elon Musk.
What did you think I was, a robot?
I think you represent an organization that uses more than one person to run your persona.
Right, I am a robot, a cloned robot with copies.
An agency, I would say.
Well, thank you for making me seem so superhumanly cunning.
You are one of the most brilliant people I have ever been in contact with.
You say that to all the girls.
I don't. And I think people very much underestimate you. And I like to call Eric Weinstein an acquaintance of mine.
I'm trained at the mess. I mean, if I were superhuman, I would, have this wonderful background.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think you certainly present yourself much more humbly, and you are cunning. I do very much believe you are in fact cunning. But you wanted to come on. What did you want to discuss?
Well, the Chilul Hashem of you consorting with Catholics.
Oh, there's no Chilul Hashem there at all whatsoever.
I'm sure there must be. I hate to point this out, but but congratulations for asking him the question about the Trinity being a betrayal of the teachings of Jesus. What do you understand? Are the teachings of Jesus?
I think Jesus was teaching Judaism. In
what way?
In every way.
Why would he need to teach Judaism to Jews?
That is what Judaism is about, is teaching Judaism to Jews. That is the job of a rabbi, of a teacher, is to teach Judaism to Jews.
But he taught Christianity to Jews.
No, actually he didn't. That was the most surprising thing. Christianity is an invention of Paul of Tarsus, and I think there are reasons why that needed to be so, but Christianity, as we understand it, I have not found any traces of it in the Christian Bible. That's the interesting part. There is no Trinity in the Christian Bible.
It's all a bunch of, well, I was going to say a word beginning with B, but it probably wouldn't be ladylike. But it was cooked up, wasn't it? Yep. By a bunch of bishops at the Council of Nicaea.
Well, I mean, I would call them a bunch of murderers. I think much of what we think of as Christianity is in fact the work of murderers. And I think when somebody is a murderer, and you can manifestly tell that, then that should obviously indicate to you that that person is not representing God.
which murderers are you talking about?
Well, my favorite murderer to pick on is John Calvin, but
But that he came much later.
Constantine refused to get baptized because until his deathbed, because he had some murdering to do. And Constantine led the Council of Nicaea, and he is in fact the person I think a lot of people correctly blame for the Trinity in general.
Yes, so it's time they were told, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think anybody who's seen my channel has any doubts about my views on the Trinity.
Well, it's a shame that Father Hugh seems to think that you're, well, Catholic friendly. I mean,
I'm very Catholic friendly. Why would I not
but
be?
why would you be?
Because the
when
Catholic
there are the
Church.
people who cooked
Because
up the Trinity.
No, hold on. There are 1 billion Catholics in the world. To write off Catholics is incredibly stupid.
Why? It's all wrong. You know, it's either wrong in principle or, you know,
First,
it's
actually,
either idolatry or blasphemy, or it isn't.
No. See, so we were actually discussing this on my server just today. This binary thinking of we are human beings. None of us have the absolute truth. We are finite, and the truth.
We're capable of grasping principles.
We are, but we all must repent. We must always repent, but which means to think again, because as human beings, we are limited. We are finite, and so
I know, but we're
nobody
capable of
has.
understanding the concept of idolatry, and you're letting them off the hook.
Well, first of all, I do have to say,
expense of your own people.
Oh,
I mean,
no. First of all, I have to say, the Monarchical Trinity, I have to say, and I believe I'm on very strong ground. The Monarchical Trinity within Judaism is not forbidden to Gentiles. A Gentile who believes in the Monarchical Trinity is a Noahide according to halacha. And I defy anybody to.
I've never heard of this thing called the Monarchical Trinity. It's quite new to me.
Well, this is part of the reason why I do have Father Hugh and Father Eric. Father Eric believes that the Monarchical Trinity is consonant with Catholicism. Father Hugh does not. I'm hoping to have.
Why have I never heard of Monarchical Trinity? What's it? Perhaps you'll explain.
Sure. So the Monarchical Trinity is a belief in the monarchy, that is the sole, I would say, aseity of what Catholics would call God the Father, which means that only God the Father is truly God. When a monarchical Trinitarian says God, they are referring only to the Father. They are not referring to Jesus. They are not referring to the Holy Spirit.
But where did it come from? I really haven't heard of this thing called the Monarchical Trinity.
So this is the thing. I believe that there are seeds within Christianity which, once they come to full bloom, will lead Christians to Judaism. And the early church fathers and the expert I would say to really pay attention to is Dr. Bo Branson, who's been several times on Sam's channel. One of the reasons I did have Sam on this stream. Sam's channel has a lot of discussion of the Monarchical Trinity on there.
Sorry, Sam who?
Sam, his channel is Transfigured.
Okay,
he goes by Sam Adams. He was on the stream earlier today.
Okay, I missed that. But where can I find a reference to this Monarchical Trinity thing that you're talking about? I mean,
It's so it actually so Dr. Branson, Dr. Bo Branson, he is a professor of theology. He is Eastern Orthodox, and he and many Eastern Orthodox Christians affirm that the monarchical Trinity is the original form and what the Church Fathers taught, specifically the Cappadocian Fathers, and another person that Sam had on his channel, Josh, and Dr. Josh. I'm not going to try to say his last name, but we discussed it when Sam was here, and he also affirms that he is Catholic. He has a PhD in religious studies, and he affirms that, and we lost whatchamacallit, Claire, unfortunately. He affirms that the monarchical Trinity is in fact the true form of the Trinity, and that's within Catholicism. And Father Eric believes that the monarchical Trinity is consonant with Catholic thought, and I would say, as a Jew, that my understanding of Jewish law is that for a Noahide, the monarchical Trinity is quite clearly within Noahide what is permitted to Gentiles. Okay. Well, if anybody has questions or comments or wants to come on, please let me know, but I am going back to work. Just in case anybody is interested, I put a link to the discussion that Sam had with Dr. Josh in the chat. I do have to say to people who are interested in holding up, I mean, you noticed that Claire suddenly disappeared when I went beyond her current knowledge and she needed to look things up, which is not something she generally does when her camera's not on. And this is part of what makes me think that she isn't an individual. In fact, I think she is I think she's an organization. I think she works with other people, and I think she does it very well. And honestly, while I am somewhat smart enough, certainly not smart as smart as some people, I don't think I'm as smart as Claire, for example. I do think that allowing her to have multiple people behind her account makes it impossible for me to effectively engage her. And you're back.
Yes, I am.
What happened, Claire?
Well, I dropped out and I thought I'd come back again to continue this conversation about this monarchical Trinity thing that I have never heard about. And you're saying it's an invention of these two men that you mentioned, these theologians?
So these two, no, it's not their invention. No. They claim that that is the proper representation of the understandings of the church fathers. And so Eastern Orthodox Christianity
They
is...
subscribe to the Trinity too, don't they?
Yes. Yes, but the Monarchical Trinity, yes. They
really? Is there a link to this thing?
Oh, yeah. So I put a link to the discussion that Dr. Josh had Trinity. Let me see if I can find Monarchy Trinity. Yeah, so this is Dr. Bo Branson. I'll put a link to this as well. And he would say that, in fact, the Monarchical Trinity is the Eastern Orthodox understanding. Obviously, Eastern Orthodoxy is not as unified as the Roman Catholic Church is. And I mean, I was delighted that Father Eric believes it is within Catholic Orthodoxy to also believe in the monarchy of the Father. And if you do believe in the monarchy of the Father, then I would say you are clearly within the halacha as a Noahide, not as a Jew. Obviously, that would be considered forbidden to a Jew.
Idolatry.
Yes, but not to a Gentile, not to a Noahide.
But isn't the whole idea that Jews and Gentiles are to worship the same God?
Yes.
That's the whole purpose of the Noahide laws, isn't it?
And to the degree that a Gentile believes in the monarchy of the Father, that is, that the God of Israel is the God of gods, is the above all the other lower gods that they may worship, that is considered sufficient monotheism within Judaism for a Gentile. I'm not recommending it.
Are you sure that that's the correct interpretation of it?
Yes,
I'm sure
no
it's
question.
controversial even amongst Jews.
No. So the controversy within Judaism is whether or not the Trinity constitutes this what we call shituf, right?
Yes,
So
which is worse than avodah zarah.
no. Now
Of
you're
course
thinking
it is. It's
no, it's not.
associating partners with God, which is worse
No,
than
that is in
idolatry.
fact the Muslim view, and we reject that. The Muslim
Why?
view is that what they call shirk, and what we call shituf, is forbidden. We believe
No,
that is
shirk
forbidden
is hidden, is idolatry.
according to Muslims. We're not
Well,
Muslims.
it's the same thing, isn't it? I mean,
No.
Jews and Muslims worship the same God. That's why it's called the
Hopefully,
Abrahamic
yes.
religions.
Hopefully, yes. But within Judaism, our requirements for Gentiles only extend to the 7 Noahide laws, whereas the Muslims have their whole belief. And within Judaism, generally, the idea is that Muslims are in fact, to the degree that they actually adhere to how we understand Islam. Obviously, you can't say you believe that you should not murder and then go around murdering people, and that's actually a large problem within Islam. But to the degree that Muslims actually believe in what Islam teaches, and to the degree that Christians believe in Christianity with the proviso of a monarchical Trinity, they I would want to talk to any Jew who believes that doesn't constitute being a perfectly Noahide. The question within Judaism has been over the years whether or not Christians believe in what some rabbis have described as being the Christian idea, which is that there's God the Father and that Jesus is a lower God. And obviously, we know that most Western, if not all Western Christians, believe in what's called the Egalitarian Trinity. And the egalitarian.
I'm afraid I don't know about these distinctions. When you talk about the egalitarian Trinity, do you mean the doctrine of the Trinity?
So the egalitarian Trinity is what most Western Christians, so Roman Catholics and Protestants, how they understand the Trinity. That within Judaism is very problematic, although some people still argue that that's still Noahide, okay for Noahides. That's where the discussion is within Judaism. The egalitarian,
but the Reform and Orthodox Jews don't agree, do they?
Oh well, Reform. I dismiss Reform Judaism. That's I call it Calvinist Judaism.
You're being deliberately confusing. Calvinist Judaism. You're inventing
Orthodox
terms.
Judaism is Orthodox Judaism. Orthodox Judaism, and I only subscribe to Orthodox Judaism. Within Orthodox Judaism, I would be very interested to hear someone's argument that the monarchical Trinity is considered idolatry for Noahides. I see no place for that.
Well, I've never heard of the monarchical Trinity, which is something cooked up well after the doctrine.
No.
When was it cooked up?
So Dr. Branson says that it is very obvious in the Cappadocian Fathers, which were about 1800 years ago. So he believes it is the original and true understanding of the Trinity. And
it's nothing to do with the Athanasian Creed. It's nothing to do with the egalitarian Trinity, as you say.
He understands it, and Dr. Josh understands it to actually be the correct interpretation of those creeds as well.
And who are these people? Are they church
They're theologians? They're prominent theologians. They're professors. They're professors of theology,
but who have absolutely no authority at all in any of the churches.
Well, both of them claim to be describing what they believe the church teaches. So Dr. Josh is a Catholic, and he believes that.
Does the church agree with them? Or can you imagine I imagine the Catholic Church, if they were taking themselves seriously, perhaps back in the times of the Inquisition, would have these two theologians you mentioned burnt at the stake for their heresy.
Possibly the Catholic Church, possibly. I'm not sure about that, but I think Dr. Branson's argument, and I mean, it's very hard to say that Eastern Orthodoxy is
defending this.
Of course, I'm defending this.
Why wouldn't I defend it?
What's wrong with what is wrong with?
Why are you defending the Trinity? Why are you defending?
I am defending the monarchical Trinity.
But you've just made this up.
I didn't make it up. No, I didn't make it up at all.
Why are you doing this?
Because I believe it's true. I believe it's true.
Why would you?
What do you mean?
Why would you believe that this cooked up crap is true?
Hold on. I don't believe in the monarchical Trinity myself. I believe that it is true. I believe that it is true.
Why are you saying it's okay for these people who don't believe in Christianity anyway?
Yeah, they do.
I mean, it's their problem. It is the whole problem of the West that they don't believe in Christianity anymore.
Oh, well,
that's why.
I am definitely opposed to atheism and secularism, as most people understand it.
But you're in favor of the Trinity.
I am in favor of people moving towards God step by step. I am an incrementalist.
No, all they need to know is that, I mean, are you really saying that Gentiles just can't understand the concept of idolatry? I mean, there are all these Muslims who understand the concept of idolatry. You seem to be saying it's beyond Christians, that they're somehow unable to understand it.
I think a lot of people,
or you dare not tell them that they're being wrong.
I don't think anybody's ever said that I dare not tell anyone anything. I am perfectly willing to tell people, but I believe in incrementally helping people closer towards God. And I believe that a Gentile who believes in the monarchical Trinity is far closer to a true understanding of God and the Bible than somebody who believes in the Egalitarian Trinity. And that's why I am engaged in this conversation, and I advocate for those Christians who view themselves as Trinitarians to step towards God by stepping towards the monarchical Trinity.
They don't believe it, do they?
There are many
They
who
only
do.
pretend to believe it. They only pretend to believe it as an act of hatred for Jews and Muslims. I mean,
oh, come on! You make these false dichotomies and generalizations.
No, I
know you are.
I wanted to talk to Father Hugh, and you wouldn't let me.
I would not allow you on. First of all,
because you know what I would have done.
Okay, there's a reason why I had to mute you. Is because you won't let me speak. Let me speak, and then I will unmute you. This was an introduction of Father Hugh to everyone else, and I didn't want you distracting from that, first of all. Second, I think you are a far more nuanced thinker than the arguments you often make, like this argument that you're making right now, which groups Christians together in a silly way. Go ahead.
But Christians are by definition Trinitarian, unless you want to count Unitarian Christians, and well, they're not the most powerful Christians, are they?
There are
they would be persecuted for the Socinian heresy in Europe.
Claire, there are 2 billion Christians in the world. The Trinity is a very confused and incoherent idea.
Yeah, so kick it out.
I would love to.
Instead of defending it and justifying it,
I would love to.
It.
I would love to. I would love to, but that is not
You would
where
love to
they
defend
are.
the Trinity.
Say what?
You said you would love to.
I would love for Christians to abandon the Trinity. Of course I would. But that's not where they are. And I believe in incrementally helping Christians move towards God.
The quickest way to dismantle the Trinity would be to ask the Pope and the Archbishop of Canterbury how and why Christianity is not idolatry and
They've
blasphemy.
answered that many times, and you know they
What
have.
what was their answer?
They go into their whole hypostasis and triunity and silliness that I believe is silly. I mean, it's an incoherent thought, but that's what they do.
Then it can be shown to be incoherent.
Well,
comprehensively, perhaps by a panel of Jews and Muslims.
I would love for Christians to abandon the Trinity.
They can't cling on to it.
Again,
Do you know what I mean?
Step by step.
No, you merely pull the rug from underneath them, and they're on the floor, and they can't defend it because it is morally and intellectually indefensible.
Claire, you are trying to sabotage the movement forward of Christianity, which I think is
it can't go forward. It can only end.
No, that's not true. That's not true. Just like Maimonides explains, and he explained very clearly that both Christianity and Islam exist to introduce the whole world to the furthest islands to the God of Israel, and to move the world towards its perfection. This is part of the world moving towards the coming of the Messiah, is that Christianity and Islam will, in fact, help people. Like I say, 3 gods is better than all the gods that all the pagans before Christianity had. So as Christians move to 3 gods, and then they move to the monarchy, and then finally they hopefully will give up the Trinity completely, step by step.
I think it's perfectly possible for them to give it up immediately, because most of them were forcibly converted anyway, and were told that
that's bull. That's bull.
They would be burnt at the stake or ostracized.
You know better than this, and
I don't.
Yes,
they don't believe in it. I know enough of them to say, well, I believe in God, but I don't believe in all this other stuff.
Oh, there's plenty.
They don't.
There's plenty of Christians.
I'm sure more Gentiles than you who claiming to be Christians from this background.
Claire, please stop talking over me. There are plenty of Christians who go to church and they say they believe in the Trinity because that's what their church teaches.
Yes. They say they believe because they like going to church to be with other people who are.
What's wrong with that? What's wrong with human companionship? Why wouldn't you support people going to church? I would prefer people go to church than to sit home alone and be alone. An individual human being is not a viable living organism.
I certainly don't say that, but I am also saying that people gather together not because they believe in a particular narrative, but because they feel they need others around them to, feel part of a group. Perhaps they don't even know why they're doing it.
No, beliefs do in fact influence how people act and whether they are able to come together. Of course they do.
Yes, but why don't Jews just tell Christians that they are idolaters and blasphemers?
That's not the Jewish way. We are not evangelical.
persecution that your people suffered
We are
at
not.
the hands of
Oh,
Christians
come
for so
on.
many centuries, and you are
Claire,
you're
again,
Christian.
you are saying silly things, which you yourself know is in fact silly. The Judaism is not an evangelical religion. We don't go around telling people what they should do or could do, because that's not our job. God will in fact make these things happen. And so the idea that we as Jews would go and tell Christians that they are idolaters, first of all, a lot of Christians are not idolaters. They are people who simply are confused, or members of churches which have leaders who are confused, and they don't really believe in the Trinity anyway.
How they should, well, tell them, their history. I mean, the Council of Nicaea was, well,
why
the
do you think,
Trinity was cooked up by a bunch of bishops. They couldn't even agree.
why do you think
that was the
Claire,
Arian heresy, wasn't it?
why do you think this would be helpful to them? How would this
Because
help
they need
Christians?
to give it up ASAP. They
Why
need
do
to
you
go
believe
cold
that? Why do you
They
believe
need to
that?
go cold turkey.
Why do you believe that?
Because otherwise they won't give up their false beliefs. They'll think, oh, as long as we pretend that Jesus is God and keep telling ourselves that, we'll get to heaven, however badly our laws are, however corrupt and incompetent our politicians are. We'll just keep believing that we'll get to heaven as long as we keep saying that Jesus is God. And they're going the wrong way. What they should be doing is understand the purpose of Christianity, which is to show that you can be flying high for quite a while and then suddenly crash and burn. After 50 years of not supporting marriage and family values, which was basically what has happened so far. So
you are pretending that a very particular strain of Christianity, Protestant Christianity, that is represents all Christians, and it simply doesn't. It simply does not.
Christianity had the purpose of supporting the divine right of kings. I mean, that was all it was ever used for. From the time of the Edict of Thessalonica.
Claire, this is silly. This is silly.
Why? I mean,
the narrative.
I don't see how you can deny that.
Claire, the narrative that you are giving is categorically below what actually happened. It's not true. Christianity has, in fact, helped people all around the world move from paganism towards monotheism. And that is the purpose of Christianity, is to help all these pagans move to monotheism, which Christianity has done very well.
Yes, I mean, I would agree with you that Islam is a synthesis of Judaism and Christianity. And Christianity was the stepping stone, and we've got it. We've got it now.
So I certainly support Christians being Christian above being atheists.
But they can be moved towards having a book of rules that actually protects their interests and also regulates the morals of their ruling classes. Don't you want that to happen in your own country?
I would certainly like to see the members of the leadership here in the United States move towards being more faithful to God. And I believe that will, in fact, happen. But that's something that has to happen gradually as people espouse actual monotheistic beliefs and belief in the Bible. And as they study their Bible, they will see that Christianity is false.
Oh, thank you. You've actually said Christianity is false. So
I've always said that. This is not
Right,
something.
so you might as well just to give it to them with both barrels and say, look, your religion is not
you
working.
trying to, again, you are trying to force me to, in fact, alienate Christians, which is not something I want to do. I would like Christians to take their faith seriously, to study their Bible, to learn, hopefully learn Hebrew, and in fact, move towards a better understanding of Christianity, which will move them away from their idolatry.
Well, just give it up. No.
What?
Well, you know what?
Of course
Is
not.
it some sort of drug? I mean, they stopped believing it. It's centuries ago. Don't you remember Nietzsche
That's
saying
not true.
in the 1880s
It's
that
not true.
God is dead and we have killed him? And when he said I guess he must have meant liberals.
Again, you are turning all of billions of people into some sort of monolith, which you're smarter.
They are
than that.
sheeple. Let's just call them sheeple.
No.
They're told that if you're not Christian and you live in a Christian country, we're going to kick you around and make you feel like a freak. So, of course, they towed the line.
Where are you getting this from?
Well, I get it from the fact that hardly anyone I know is a Christian. The prevailing culture is atheism. Surely you have noticed
It's
that.
a Christian atheism, though.
What does it matter if it's...
Oh, it
a
matters
degenerate?
because pagan atheism is far worse.
What experience do you have of pagan atheism?
Personally, thank God I've never lived in a pagan atheist country, but China and India, where infanticide is rampant, is a perfect example.
I mean, abortion is pretty rampant in America and the West. I mean, you don't count that as infanticide, or do you? I don't know.
Again, you are turning things that are in fact nuanced. You are turning them into simple binaries, and the only reason I can imagine that you are doing that is in fact because you are trying to sabotage people moving together through a nuanced understanding of things.
No, nuanced understandings is fudging the issue. I mean, let's just admit it. It is fudging the issue. You don't want to be, mean to Christians and mean about the Trinity. And
why should I be mean? Of course I don't want to be mean. Why would I want to be mean?
Well, sometimes it is necessary to be cruel in order to be kind.
Sometimes, not always. Sometimes.
Well, we live in extraordinary times, don't we?
They're not that extraordinary. I mean, we have had certainly worse times, and we've certainly had better times. And I would rather live today than I would 200 years ago. That's for sure.
But we know what the problem is now, don't we? I mean, when you think about the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, I mean, come on.
You cannot, again, Claire, you cannot lump everything in together and rob everything of nuance the way that you do.
What is this nuance that you want? I've already accepted that Western history is based on Christianity. Of course it is. I didn't say Christianity.
And that is a positive. That is a positive development
for Europeans. But now it is time to move on.
And hopefully, they will move on from.
Would you like them to move on after World War III or before World War III? I mean, your interests are affected. If World War III blows up, you're going to get affected too. I mean, I guess Europeans are going to get it worse, but you know.
This apocalypticism is, I mean, you are displaying very common characteristics of cognitive distortions, which is how I believe your side and the people you advocate for are in fact dismantling and destroying our society. Is through the Inquisition.
Are you talking about Muslims, which you perceive to be so threatening
You're not a
to
Muslim.
you? Well, who are you talking about then?
I'm talking about you and your postmodernist agenda, neo-Marxist
What
agenda.
is my alleged postmodernist agenda? These are labels that you've stuck on me that I've always been tearing off. I don't accept this. If I'm a postmodernist, then I guess it's an age, isn't it? To be postmodernist is to be born in a certain age, and I can't help when I was born. I am a creature of my age, in the same way that somebody who was a Victorian or a Tudor or an Edwardian couldn't help being born in the reigns of those monarchs.
See, this is the thing. You are advocating for postmodernism as if it is the default of humanity, and it isn't.
No, I don't even know what it means. What do you mean?
Well, that's exactly what postmodernists say. I mean, Wokal Distance, you may not know who that is, but hopefully my audience is aware of Wokal Distance. He very recently on his Twitter thread, and I highly recommend his Twitter, explained why postmodernists are constantly trying to stop themselves from being labeled what they are, because that's how you, in fact, are able to deconstruct postmodernism. So, of course, you're constantly trying to take that label off yourself.
But
you
I don't
like
even
being
know what it
identified.
means. What are you accusing me of?
I'm accusing you of being a postmodernist.
And what is it?
Postmodernism is a school of thought which includes people like Michel Foucault.
I've never read any of his works.
I don't believe you.
Well, this is your preoccupation.
This is my belief. I believe.
Put me into your particular pigeonhole. I don't know what you are accusing me of. Obviously, to be
I am very clear what I'm.
Because it's a very bad thing.
I made a whole video. Who is Claire Kaw? In which I explained exactly what I accuse you of.
Well, explain it in a sentence. So
It's more complicated than a sentence. That's why we use a term like postmodernism. Anybody who wants to understand what postmodernism is, there are people like Wokal Distance and James Lindsay and Chris Rufo who explain exactly what it is. And part of the postmodernist game you are playing is, in fact, to go ahead and try to confuse the matter and stop people from identifying you for who you are.
And what am I? I just want a bit of clarity. And you say I'm not being.
I think you're very dishonest. I think you are incredibly dishonest because you are a postmodernist.
I deny.
Of course you do.
Know what you...
All postmodernists deny being postmodernist.
So who's a postmodernist?
Kimberly Crenshaw.
Never heard of her.
D'Angelo, what's her first name? I forget her first name. She wrote all these critical race theorists. Ibrahim Kendi.
I don't know who they are.
I don't believe you.
Why? Why do you assume that I would be cognizant of your particular obsessions and
Michel Foucault is in fact. I mean. I know
that on modern philosophy. It's stupid. The whole thing is stupid.
You are pretending not to be aware of what is the top of the news. I mean, everybody has heard of critical race theory. You haven't heard of critical race theory?
Foucault is responsible for it, is he?
Yes.
Right. So.
You've heard of critical race theory.
Why are you accusing me of supporting critical race theory?
Because that's what you do. That is precisely.
How? What have I said? What have I said?
This whole concept of secular Coranism is precisely the type of postmodernist construct that is, in fact, capable of doing precisely what you are trying to do, which is sabotage thought in this corner of the internet.
How have
you are a saboteur.
Any thought?
Say that again.
How have I sabotaged any thought? Your accusations against me are just getting crazier and crazier.
Your discussion, I wasn't able to watch too much of it before it was taken off. With Snorkel Blog, for example, I think you have embedded lots of terrible ideas into his mind, which are such as this idea that Christianity needs and can be discarded, which is silly.
Why shouldn't it be discarded if it's lost its purpose?
Christianity, see, this is the thing. You supposedly advocate for secular Coranism, knowing both those things are not coherent. You know that.
Well, why is it incoherent? It's just a new school of Sharia, as I interpret it.
You're being silly. You know that.
Well,
you know that. You're just lying.
That's exactly what secular Coranism is. I'm sorry you don't like it.
This is an obvious lie. You know
what is?
The idea that secular Coranism is not an obvious contradiction in terms. You know that.
It's a new school of Sharia, as I
No, it's not. See, 5 seconds ago, you were telling me that the Monarchical Trinity I came up by myself, but see, iron law of woke projection as a postmodernist.
No, the Trinity, it has been.
You will say, so this is the thing. People will hear this and they will unfortunately think Claire Caw is a silly person who doesn't understand she is saying silly things, which is a huge mistake because Claire Caw is a member of the bar in the United Kingdom. She was able to pass her bar exam. She is a qualified solicitor, I believe you call it, in the United Kingdom. And so to believe she can't understand something as simple as the inherent contradiction of secular Coranism is to allow her to get away with her deception. And this is the problem we are in fact having with critical race theory and postmodernism in general.
Mixing secular Coranism up with critical race theory. I don't
secular Coranism is performative critical race theory.
How so?
You are performing.
It's not true just because you put a few sentences and a few concepts together.
You are performing. You are a postmodern performance artist. You are performing.
I don't even know what you mean, but I mean, if you think I'm entertaining, well, thank you.
No, that's not what I meant. You are a postmodernist performance artist in that you are actually very successfully carrying out your social justice agenda and destroying the right. You have been incredibly successful in destroying the right.
How have I destroyed anything?
Oh, your interview with E. Michael Jones was brilliant. I have never seen anybody. I mean, that was absolutely brilliant. I have to say, it was. I was inspired.
You liked it. What did you like about it?
You humiliated him.
Well, he came back for seconds, and he obviously was enjoying himself.
Oh, of course. That's what you do. That is what you do. You are brilliant, Claire. You are absolutely brilliant.
Oh, well, it would be nice to have my own talk show.
No, I don't think that's what you want. I know that's not what you want.
What do you think I wanted
to? I think you seriously believe that you are advancing social justice.
Well, I just want justice. I mean, there's no need to
social
modify.
Justice. No.
Well, economic justice, any kind of justice.
Right. So you are, in fact, a postmodern neo-Marxist.
Wanting justice is postmodern. I think that's a natural.
Well, your concept of justice isn't actually justice at all.
Why not?
Well,
why are you saying these terrible things about me? That I'm somehow unjust. How am I unjust? Can
I
you think
think-
of anything I've said that suggests that I'm unjust and
Oh,
don't care
sure.
about justice?
You think of things in these communitarian. I mean, lots of things you've said. The way you are constantly condemning Christians, that's certainly unjust.
Well, I'm just following the principle of the no-hide laws.
No, you are not.
And you, as a Jew, should also condemn idolatry
No,
and
see, this is
blasphemy.
the thing, and honestly, I'm very glad that I have the mute button, because in order to actually address a postmodern performance artist of your caliber, you have to be able to stop. And this is why, for example, on my server, the only channel you're allowed on, Mendacity, which I think very much describes you. I put a timer on, because you run mental gymnastics around people. You are absolutely brilliant. You have a far higher IQ than pretty much anybody else I've ever encountered. And in your dedication to this postmodern neo-Marxist view, you are in fact part of the woke. You have been awoken, and you use your skills to deconstruct and destroy what you believe to be the structures of racism, the structural oppression that exists in the West. And you do it very well. You do it incredibly well.
He listens to me.
That's not true. That's not true. You know.
Are you saying you listen to me a little bit every now and then?
Oh, of course. I monitor you. I think I have encountered a little glimpse of the postmodern machinery that is destroying the West. I think you are the closest I have ever gotten to the people who actually really are controlling the world.
Who?
The postmodernists. The long march.
Okay, so those people that I've never heard of, you think
I don't believe
I'm
you.
somehow
I think
working
you
for
actually know Nick Land and Sadie. I can't.
them.
I don't.
Talking about these people that I've never. Okay, I only first heard of them through you, and they're not active. Oh,
Yeah, I think they actually are, but I mean, it's possible. I don't know. I don't have the resources you do.
I don't have these resources that you think I have, but it's flattering that you've made me and my untidy room seem this Marvel supervillain that you have baked me up to be. I'm just pointing out a few things that I think a lot of people ought to know by now, that the moral system of the West has broken down, and it has been breaking down for quite a few centuries now.
You are,
and that Christianity is
imposing-
incapable of being
No,
reformed.
you are imposing, and again, so this is how the postmodernists are in fact helping to deconstruct our society, is that we know scientifically that cognitive distortions, what cognitive behavioral therapy refers to as cognitive distortions, and if you want a better understanding of this, I highly recommend the book The Coddling of the American Mind by Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt, where they expose how our society is in fact creating cognitive distortions within society in order to alienate people, in order to systematically, well, they don't go this far. You should look at the work of James Lindsay to see further, but you can start with Jonathan Haidt. James Lindsay, I think, really is the person who has been identifying what's going on and the agenda that Claire is in fact doing, which is they take what we know psychologically, which is cognitive distortions, and they are introducing them into our society. Cognitive distortions are incredibly debilitating and strong, and they human beings naturally fall into them. And by doing that, they are introducing mental illness into our society, and in fact, helping to destroy the West. I think that is what Claire is here to do, is to destroy the West by imposing cognitive distortions on us in her train of thinking. And so secular Coranism is precisely one of these mental constructs, this malware that they have come up with in order to destroy the West. Go ahead, Claire.
I think you're doing it to yourself by constantly calling for more nuance, which is more fudging of the issue, more confusion, more grey areas that you like to paint over everything because you don't want to tell these Christians that they are idolaters and blasphemers.
So this is actually one of the cognitive distortions. And I highly recommend going through a list of the cognitive distortions to see what is going on. You should be able to hear in Claire imposing cognitive distortions such as black and white thinking, splitting, and this type of thought causes mental illness. We know this scientifically. And she is deliberately causing mental illness in people. That's why she is here.
I think there's a lot of mental illness going round, and it is rather unfair to blame me for it, because what I'm trying to do is guide people towards making a decision about yes or no, in or out, up or down. And you're
exactly, she is, in fact, what she is doing is telling us to engage in the cognitive distortion of splitting. And that is what I want to show. The cognitive distortions will destroy you. They cause anxiety, they cause depression, and that's why people, for example, now I'm blanking on his name, but he's a famous alt-right YouTuber. That's why he's allowed to get. You will never find Claire trying to destroy him. She will destroy. What's his name?
Tell me what he does.
He's an alt-right YouTuber. He's depressed. Snorkel Blog was on his show.
Oh, Millennial Woes.
That's it. Millennial Woes. I don't think I'm pretty sure you and your organization are happy about Millennial Woes. Yeah.
What? Why? Why would
Because
I be
he's
happy
depressed.
about him?
Because he's
Being
depressed.
He won't let me on his. He won't invite me on Millennial. You know.
Well,
So I'm not happy about that.
Really?
You're a bit braver than he is.
You tried to get on and he didn't invite you? I'm surprised to hear
he doesn't
that.
want me on.
Why? What does he say?
Well, the thing is, he you know, the overwhelmingly Islamophobe. So of course they'd hate secular Quranism. So and it's been years now. But you know, every Christmas he would do a series of these interviews that everybody gags to get on, and he keeps. You know, I tried to get on his show. He wouldn't let me on. I tried to find a reason, and he was just sort of giving me the runaround because he didn't want secular Quranism to be platformed by him. So I've gone to the others. They don't want to talk about it either. In fact, there's a kind of conspiracy to say, don't let her on. You don't know what you're unleashing. And
yeah, I could believe your organization might not be completely happy with him. Yeah.
No. I mean, if I had this organization, I'd have my own channel. I'd have my own show. Because I can't get platformed on the mainstream because they don't like secular Quranism because it is the antithesis you see, of liberal democracy, which I don't mind admitting that, it's not working. So, we should just, admit defeat and say, liberal democracy, it was failing in Weimar Germany, it wasn't working. The sort of lie of pretending that democracies are less prone to war, it's a complete lie. When you think of Britain declaring war on Germany in the First and Second World War, Britain was a democracy even then. In fact, the First World War was declared on Germany in 1914 in anticipation of the general election in 1915, which was, of course, cancelled.
Just for the audience, I want to identify what you're doing here, which is you have this narrative, which is, in fact, very divisive and is very well calculated to alienate people from their societies, to impose...
Alienate them from democracy, yes.
It's
time to acknowledge it's not working.
Right. So you are trying to, in fact, deconstruct Western society. And you do it very well. You do it very well.
No, because you have no arguments. You can't say, "Oh, it's working perfectly well, Claire. Christianity is fine. Liberal democracy is going."
So this is again the cognitive distortion of splitting, which is
no. I'm just there's no cognitive distortion.
Yeah,
everybody who listens to me agrees with me, and you're trying to fight it.
This is very obviously the cognitive distortion of splitting. And I highly recommend anybody listening to this to actually look up cognitive distortions and see how this train of thought is, in fact, trying to move all of us into mental illness. Cognitive distortions cause depression and anxiety.
Neurosis. It causes neurosis, yes.
Yeah, it does. And that's exactly what you're advocating.
No, I'm saying make a decision and stop being neurotic. And I'm asking you, Jacob, to
again,
make a decision
this is black and white thinking.
Because, Jacob, you are neurotic. You are. Just admit it.
Oh, I had to take cognitive behavioral therapy because of my personal mental illness issues, which I have had, and I'm not ashamed of that.
Thank you for
thank God.
It.
Say that again.
Thank you for admitting it.
Yeah, no, and thank God for a very good psychologists and psychiatrists who have helped me a lot. And again, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Do you think it's anything to do with you being Jewish in a kind of Woody Allen sort of way?
I think it. Well, Jews are genetically predisposed to neuroticism, and my family definitely is genetically disposed to mental health issues. Yeah, there's no question about that.
Well, but don't you think it's because, on the one hand, if you live in the diaspora, on the one hand, you want to, be what you're supposed to be, Jewish, and on the other hand, you want to fit in, and there's always this sort of pulling you in different directions.
So just to identify for the people listening, so this is Marx's idea of alienation. It is part of the religion that Claire actually believes in, and promoting that alienation in people is in fact part of how they believe that we will be freed from false consciousness, which is what they are trying to deconstruct. So, yeah, I mean, you're a very good Marxist.
Well, I'm not a Marxist. I mean, I agree with historical materialism, but I'm saying, it's not just Jews who are being pulled in different directions. We have, certain loyalties. I mean, I guess for a child, it would be, when mum and dad are asking it to do different conflicting things, and the child has to make a decision about which one to obey. And we see cartoonish renditions of a computer being given conflicting instructions and it just explodes, right? I mean, that's the cartoonish rendition of cognitive dissonance, this neurosis that causes a computer to explode because it doesn't know which way to go. And I'm afraid, for Jews, it is even worse than, for other races who just want to assimilate. I mean, I think it will have an effect on, I think, most immigrants to the West, because, on the one hand, they want to think that they made the right decision coming to the West. But, on the other hand, they have to come to terms with the fact that their genetic inheritance is going to be wiped out and their children are not going to know anything of their ancestry, their history, their religion. It's all going to go, and you've gone native.
So this is critical race theory, which has people being essentially part of their race. And I mean, I hope to the people who have listened to James Lindsay, it's clear. I mean, what Claire has just been saying is clearly a manifestation of the types of things that, I mean, critical race theory. This is who Claire is.
Well, I'm associated with the right, but I don't know why you're trying to paint me as some kind of leftist communist person. I really don't. You're just confusing people,
No. In fact, I hope I'm helping people clearly see that you're not part of the right at all. You are a saboteur.
Well, the right don't quite like me because I'm saying that, the only way they can get their country back is to acquire a moral system that actually works or could work in theory. Nothing they have at the moment could possibly work. I mean, some of them want to go back to Christianity, which they never believed in anyway, and then the others want to go.
This is the cognitive distortion of catastrophizing, and I mean, Claire's really good at introducing cognitive distortions into people, and hopefully, if people who are not a lot of people are watching, but if people are paying attention and people do see this, all I can hope is that they see what's going on here, which is Claire is a critical race theory activist. She is a postmodern artist who is enacting this ideology by introducing mental illness into communities which she wants to destroy. And this is the sabotage that she does. For more
Which communities are you accusing me of wanting to destroy? The Jewish community or what?
I think you would like to destroy anything Western, certainly any religion. I think
I don't mind admitting that I am saying that the West has the wrong religion, so I don't mind. And I'm saying, yes, it is nearly 2,000 years of Christianity, and I'm saying it's a wrong religion and there's a better one. You might as well pick that up and go with it. Yes, I am saying that. And it's for everybody's good, because we don't want the West to become a failed state, do we? And certainly not.
Oh, I think you do. No. I think you would really... You are, in fact, that's what you are trying to do, is to deconstruct Western states and destroy them.
You're just too attached to Christianity. You're saying, oh, don't I have to protect this Christianity thing? And I'm saying, no, that's what's harming them.
No, Christianity.
The fact that it is no longer working, they don't believe in it, that their morals have rotted because they haven't a functioning religion for centuries. And they thought they could, limp along with liberalism, and that's gone. Well, that's rotted into.
You are introducing mental illness. That's what you're doing.
I may be causing anxiety and distress in people who want to think that their moral and political system is working. But I'm saying you have to acknowledge that the Titanic has hit the...
Okay, so hold on. Once again, what you just did is split things, right? Either it's working or it's not. It can't be okay. It can't be something that can be improved or made worse. You are, in fact, that's what you are doing, is introducing mental illness and cognitive distortions into people in your framing. And that is what critical race theorists do.
It's already there. I didn't cause it. I'm just pointing it out, and I'm pointing out its causes. You don't like the message, you shoot the messenger.
No, you know what you're doing, and you're doing it very effectively. I just wonder where you get the money to do this.
I just say what I believe to be the truth. I
Yeah,
don't need
but how do you have more than 24 hours in a day to go around telling? You obviously do. I mean, anybody who follows you sees that.
Well, perhaps I spend too much time online.
You spend more than 24 hours every day online.
You credit me with powers that I do not have.
I credit you with powers you obviously enjoy.
I enjoy contemplating the world and working out its problems.
No,
I want to contribute to its well-being by pointing out the obvious solution that you wish to suppress, because you are essentially, Jacob, neurotic.
I'm trying to help people see the cognitive distortions, and you are imposing cognitive distortions on people.
No, I'm pointing out the problem, and they don't like it. That's why they run away. Well, thank you for not
You are trying to
away.
awaken them to the truth of your critical race theory.
It's not critical race theory, it's secular Quranism.
That's performative critical race theory.
I don't think people understand your clever little jokes, Jacob.
But you
I guess
but I can see in your face that you understand.
No, I see the effort you make in just showing off your cleverness and these sort of postmodernist, ironic asides.
Have I caught you, Claire? Or are you letting me flatter myself? I wonder.
I don't know. I don't know what you're trying to do. I mean, I can only guess at your.
I've told you very clearly what I'm trying to do, Claire.
You were trying to do. You basically.
I'm trying to expose you, Claire. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to expose you.
Well, there's nothing to expose. In a way, I'm an open book. I have revealed myself on your channel. I've told you exactly what I'm trying to do.
How did you get E. Michael Jones? Like it was.
He's quite easy to get because he'll appear on anyone's channel. and I asked him, and he appeared on mine.
Have you gone after Red Ice?
They won't have me. But I'd like to appear on Academic Agent. Do you listen to Gotto and Gottfried?
No, I'm not big in. I mean, a lot of these. I mean, they're obviously sabotaged communities. You're very
controlled opposition, I would say.
Well, you're the controller.
I'm not.
I think you are.
Okay. Well,
I very much think you do. Very. Sometimes you're cruel. I think what you do with David is cruel. And
what have I done to him? What have I done to him? Come on.
I think anybody who seriously watches your interactions with him, and pays attention sees the cruelty there. And I think it's wrong, Claire.
I'm cruel to and kind to people equally, I think.
You are punching down, Claire.
Oh,
With
no, he
with
makes
David,
himself up as this sort of,
with David,
managerial class.
you with David, you are punching down, and that goes against what you believe is right. And I mean, that's what critical race theory would tell you. You are in fact helping to oppress David.
I don't think he thinks of me in those terms.
Of course he doesn't. But do you think of yourself in those terms?
No, I'm just pointing out his inconsistencies if we think I've been mean to him because of his multiple truth hypothesis, which I say is, what the English meant when they say, when they used to say things like, you can't have your cake and eat it.
You think as a Jew he can't possibly be part of the oppressors, and you think it's fair game to use him how you're using him? Is that how you?
He's a
What?
liberal. He's a liberal.
Okay.
Which means that he will.
But he's still a Jew. I mean, don't you believe in race essentialism? Aren't you?
I don't know what that means.
Don't you believe that his racial identity is imposed on him by the constructs, the systemic racism?
Well, I know Gentiles, have a bee in their bonnet about Jews. And this causes neurosis in both Jews and Gentiles in the West because they haven't come to terms with the fact that Christianity was always meant to fail.
Why do you feel comfortable punching down on somebody like, or do you believe that David is below you in the hierarchy of oppression, or above you?
Well, sometimes people are above me, sometimes they're beneath me. It depends on the context and the situation.
So because you're female, he's white. So you believe you're above him in the hierarchy. So he's above you.
No, I don't know. I mean, we don't have a stable hierarchy. Intersectionality is the inversion of the patriarchy. So it might, revert to its original position. I mean, we are living in very unstable times. So nobody quite knows what their place is. And that's why they're watching their P's and Q's. They don't want to say anything too much in case they get into trouble.
So would you consider yourself a student of Derek Bell?
I don't know who he is. You're just mentioning all these people that I don't know. Who is he?
He's a critical race theorist, a teacher of Kimberly Crenshaw. I'm trying to help identify for myself where your actual critical race theory beliefs are.
I don't know anything about critical race theory. I know it's something that is used to make white people feel guilty about their imperial guilt. Yes, that's as much as I know about it.
And should they be guilty?
Well, they've got all kinds of arguments that I'm surprised that they never use, because I could easily make arguments on their behalf. But they are so.
But are they guilty?
They're afraid to defend themselves, and when you defend them, they say, "Don't defend me," because just let them, kick my head in or whatever, and then they'll leave me alone. But don't do me, don't even defend me, because it'll just prolong the attention, the unwelcome attention.
And do you think they should be centered?
Who should be censored?
Centered.
Well, I'm saying that they should defend themselves with arguments and facts, but they're too afraid to even do that. So it's not.
So you want to see the conflict be more engaged.
I want people to use facts and logic to form arguments to push back on the stupidity and the craziness. But if they can't even do that, what does this all mean? Are they catatonic? Are they actually incapable of formulating arguments? Or they're too afraid to do so? Both are equally disturbing, don't you think?
Well, I think you do a very good job of setting up a narrative, which, I mean, you are promoting conflict. You're a brilliant saboteur. You are absolutely brilliant.
Well, I'm saying that you have to admit that you're ill before you will seek a cure and take it. And I think, we're ready. We're there. People are ill and they can't take it no more. So eventually they'll drag themselves to the doctor and the doctor will prescribe a cure and they will either take it or not take it.
When did you first read Marx?
I've never read Marx. I picked it up here and there. I've never read the Communist Manifesto.
So what do you read?
I don't read much these days.
What did you read?
I used to read novels, and then I read nonfiction, history, biography.
Which novels?
Trollope. I enjoyed the novels of Anthony Trollope. Detective fiction I also enjoyed. What about you?
Oh, I grew up on Dostoevsky. I loved Dostoevsky as a teenager. I absolutely adored him.
What did you like about his nihilism?
Dostoevsky is not nihilist.
What is he?
Integrally, I would say Christian. He's very Christian.
What does that mean? Did he believe in the Trinity? I'm sure you don't mean that, do you? It's all about guilt, it seems. Doing something terrible and then I remember some drama about it, about the brothers. What's it?
Karamazov. Yeah, it's actually a great it's a great book. Brothers Karamazov. It's yeah.
Would you like
I
to tell?
highly recommend it. You might like it, Claire.
Could you remind me of the story again? Some murder of a landlady takes place. Yes.
No, that's Crime and Punishment. That's a different book by him. That's his more famous book. The most famous scene, and in many ways, I would say, kind of. So the way he sets it up, one of the brothers tells this story to another one of the brothers, but Jesus comes back in the middle of the Inquisition, and the inquisitors arrest him, and the for heresy, and they imprison him, and the inquisitor comes to his cell and admits that he recognizes Jesus and says, "We have everything. Why did you come back? We have everything how we want it. We're going to have to kill you. Why did you come back?" And Jesus kisses him on the lips. And the inquisitor is so shocked that he walks out of the cell and he leaves the door ajar.
so he could escape.
Yeah.
Did he?
I don't remember. I don't remember. It's been 30 years since I read it.
Mhm.
But it's a deeply Christian idea of God coming to save the world and humanity killing him over and over again. It's a very Christian idea, and it's Dostoevsky, I would say, is very fundamentally Christian.
I think it's the sickness in the soul of the European to keep going back to this sentimental and absurd nonsense. It's wishful thinking, and it's also idolatry. So if God exists, you're condemning yourselves. And I see that it has a certain appeal for you. This idea of God made flesh, and then perhaps meeting him. That's this is what a lot of Christians say. I saw Jesus, I met Jesus, he spoke to me, he looked at me, and my life changed.
That's beautiful.
Well,
that is the essence of Judaism. God creates man in his image, and the creator of the universe stands before Abraham and argues with him, and in fact, in a very real way, wrestles with Jacob. That's what Israel means, to wrestle with God. So
yes, because you have to interpret God's word and laws. Yes, that's your actual wrestling.
to some extent, but you also have to wrestle with God emotionally, not just through your reason.
Yes, because there is this internal dialogue you're supposed to be having, essentially with your better self, if God does not in fact exist.
But God does exist.
Well, then you should fear him and not be consorting with Christians and defending the Trinity. Very bad.
You have it backwards. Like Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your might and all your soul and everything you have, and love your fellow man as yourself. These are the twin. That is the core of Judaism, which Jesus taught, and which is the eternal thread that keeps Christianity and Christians connected to God. And it's a beautiful thing.
I think you're about to convert to Christianity. Aren't you? You could be one of those messianic Jews.
Maybe. I would like to think I am not afraid of. I have to repent. I know that I have to repent. That, and I try to do that step by step. And I think that's what all of us do: is move towards an infinite God with finite steps.
Well, the rule system is quite simple in a way. If God exists and revealed the Torah to Jews first and the Quran to Gentiles finally, then we have to compare the two, don't we?
I don't think it's finally. I think revelation is a process.
Well, we can be confronted with words and ideas that we think we understand, but in fact we don't until much later. Did you ever find that something that you thought you knew, perhaps a form of words, you could easily remember, but whose meaning you didn't quite grasp, only comes to light years later? like, oh, that's what Mum meant when she said, or Grandma, usually Grandma who's dead and gone, meant when she said this and that. That's what I mean, really.
I think that's what being a human is. In fact, living a life of constant repentance.
Only if we check ourselves. A lot of, well, if these Christians do not care to consider whether they are, if their beliefs are in fact idolatrous, and they're not going to get anywhere. They're not going to correct themselves, and I'm afraid we as minorities living in their land will, well, suffer too if they don't correct themselves, and that's why it should be done as soon as possible.
If that's your feeling, well, why don't you leave? Why are you living in their lands if you feel it is their lands?
Because they control the world.
And you want to destroy them?
No, I only want to destroy what is bad of the West. And I think a lot of Westerners agree with me that there's quite a lot that is bad.
What's good about the West?
Well, the communications, the freedoms which have now become licensed, the order that is now becoming chaos, the self-confidence that is now becoming self-hatred.
Is that something? Was man born free and everywhere now in chains? Is that like what you believe?
No, it's not something not an idea I subscribe. I mean, we're all in a way limited by what we wish to do but cannot, because of the limits of our talents and limits of our resources, whatever. But I think the ability to be rational is no longer a Western trait. I think the rest of the world must think of the West as suffering from amnesia or dementia. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, but that's what they used to teach us, and they don't even remember it now.
So is reason the only way of knowing?
It's the only way of solving problems, Jacob. We have to exercise reason based on reasoning using, whatever facts that we have that is, well, undisputed and based on truth, that is in harmony with reality, and subject to what is logical. We have to constrain by ourselves by what is moral.
And all of that is material. There's no spiritual element to that.
Well, the spiritual element must be, desire to enjoy justice, to live in a just society, to be treated fairly. And if we want to be treated fairly, we have ourselves to treat other people fairly. And there is no justice without truth, is there?
There is no justice without truth. I think I agree with that.
Well, if you don't correctly assess whether somebody is guilty or innocent, then you're not dispensing justice. If you deliberately ignore something, that is.
So you feel that we as human beings have to dispense justice?
Well, we aspire to enjoy justice, and the only way we can deserve justice is to ourselves be truthful and think about what these principles might be. And if we don't understand it, then, well, we wouldn't even understand what justice is. And if we have no functioning moral system and nobody even understands what a principle is, then how are we to enjoy justice?
Is justice individual or collective?
Well, individual in the sense that we can choose to treat other individuals fairly, and collective in the sense that we expect justice and get justice from the legal system.
Why?
It is part of your no-hide laws, isn't it? You know, the positive requirement to establish a court and legal system.
That is, but I think you misunderstand the Jewish concept of justice there, because ultimately justice can only come from God.
Well, surely it should come from our courts, certainly from the Supreme Court of
No,
the United States.
no, that's not
Well,
possible.
if it's the most powerful country in the West, one would hope that there is some possibility of getting justice.
That's idolatry. You are committing idolatry.
Why? How?
Because you are putting your hope of justice in the Supreme Court as opposed to God.
Well, the idea is that if we follow God's laws, we will enjoy justice. And there is some doubt as to whether the Supreme Court of the United States enjoys God's blessing.
They're human beings. We're all human beings, and
Yes, and
as
they're mostly
human
idolatry.
beings, say that again.
Well, these human beings are probably guilty of idolatry, being mostly Christian.
No, I think the vast majority of people, well, of course, we're all confused. We're all confused. A human being can't. We're not capable of full rationality, and I think part of the cognitive distortion of splitting, of black and white thinking, is demanding this sort of binary there. We can repent. That's all we can do is repent. We will sin as in miss the mark, and we must and can repent.
Yes, and we must resolve not to commit the same mistake. And idolatry is a human inclination.
But you don't believe in God.
Slide into it.
But you don't believe in God.
I don't have to believe in God to understand the opportunity cost of idolatry. Because basically, you're an idolater if you're not Jewish or Muslim.
I think you're wrong there.
Yes, you would, because I know you're half in love with Christianity, and that is really your problem. You are torn, and people who are torn experience neurosis.
So you're never torn?
Of course I am torn, but at least I acknowledge situations when I'm being torn. But I mean, on this matter of idolatry, it's clear to me that to not be either Jewish or Muslim means that we are idolaters, and we can see why. I mean, the opportunity cost of being an idolater is to not be rightly guided.
If there is a God.
We must hypothesize that there is a God and behave as if he exists, even though we might doubt his existence, because that is the only way to ensure justice, well, that most of us receive justice and live in an orderly society that is.
So do you act like there is a God?
I think I do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I do promote a theocracy after all.
A secular theocracy.
It would be better than what we have, wouldn't it? I mean, we need a book of rules.
No, it certainly would not be better than what we have. You are creating an obvious absurdity that you know is an absurdity.
How is it absurd? The Quran is in existence.
Mm.
You don't know what my interpretation, or why do you assume that my interpretation is wrong and would be?
So you're the prophet of this new religion?
Oh no, I'm just a new school of Sharia. There are many examples of Islamic
But you
jurisprudence.
were dismissive of the monarchical trinity. Why shouldn't we be dismissive of your secular Quranism?
Because the monarchical trinity only has the purpose of legitimizing Christianity, which is, I believe, irreparable and beyond saving. But
Were
for
you
reasons of
raised
sentimentality.
as a Christian?
No, but I think everybody in the world enjoys, Christmas, Santa, carols, Christmas movies, the whole ritual of buying presents, and I think it's a global thing. It's a consumer event, is it not? Eating turkey. It's something that I think everybody subscribes to, because it's been so beautifully packaged and propagated and
So
expressed.
why are you so hostile to it?
I'm saying it's all that has to be given up in order to be rightly guided.
Why this binary? Why can't it incrementally improve?
Well, because there's no time. I mean, do you really think we have time to, wend our way to?
Yeah,
To
I believe,
righteousness
and I'm surprised you don't believe in the arc of the moral universe and history. You said you believe in the historical dialectic.
I think if something should be done, it must be done. If it must be done, it must be done as soon as possible.
As soon as
there's so much at stake.
possible. As soon as possible.
Yes.
Are you familiar with the Alcoholic's Prayer?
Is it like what's it? Make me chaste, but not yet. That kind of thing.
So the formulation I like is, God, give me the strength to change that which I can, the grace to accept that which I cannot, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's the way I usually say it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful prayer.
We don't know if we can or not until we try.
I think we can be wise and discerning.
We can be too timorous.
We
and
can
be full of regrets.
True. And I think that's why you have to have a certain empiricism in it. I mean, honestly, what I would love is for all Christians to repudiate the Trinity today. But
you have to give them something to go to. You can't just say, well, we're going to, take away your Trinity. You have to give them a new thing for them to, you want to give
the monarchical Trinity. So why aren't you advocating for the monarchical Trinity?
I never heard of it until this stream. Never heard of it.
You should look into it. I think maybe you will join me in advocating for it.
No, I just don't see why I would. It has no. Okay, when you mentioned it, I was thinking of somebody called Jules Gomez. I don't know if you'd like to read it. You might even enjoy the story. So it's Jules Gomez, Jules Gomes. And it's the Trinity, and it's to do with the Church of England. And you might find the story relevant to what you've been saying.
Never heard of him before.
Right, but have you got have you got to the page where it mentions the Trinity?
No. He has this website. I don't really know much about him.
Okay.
So tell me about him. Why do you like this guy?
Because well, I wanted you to read it and tell me what you think of it.
Well, what do you think of it?
It's been a while since I've read it.
So
I thought
what
it was
made
very
you think of
interesting. I was
him?
quite excited when I first read it.
Why'd you bring him up?
Because it's similar to what you were saying about the Monarchical Trinity.
Yeah, I don't see anything actually at all
Maybe
about
my computers have been very slow. There it is. I'll put it in the chat so you can maybe share it or read it.
I mean, he claims to be a Catholic, but he doesn't appear to be involved with the church at all.
Yeah, I don't know what's happened to him, but here's the link anyway in the private chat.
Oh, he says it's a satirical essay. Yeah. So it's marked as a
Well, when I first read it, he that wasn't mentioned.
And you didn't see the satire?
No, I didn't. It seemed, because he was part of the church. I took it at its word.
No, as far as I know, he's not part of the church at all.
Well, he
as
was
far
an
as I've been
activist.
able to...
He was disapproving of the liberalism of the Church of England. But I think he's gone a bit quiet now. Actually, it's not his. It's not his. I think it's not his website, or it is. I don't know. But when it was, it didn't have all these warnings, these trigger warnings.
Okay, Claire. I am getting tired, and I need to do some work.
All right.
Thank you for your engagement. Hopefully, this will be useful to some people in identifying your organization.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm gonna end the broadcast.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
Okay.